Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if neglected Naruto has mercy. Lego part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Opening theme Aqua Times. It was a normal sunny day in Kobe City, Japan. It was around 5:30 in the morning and the birds were chirping their happy tune. They continued to sing their tune until an alarm came to life within a small apartment. It was a normal one-person apartment with a kitchen, bathroom and a small bedroom and a living room big enough to hold a full-length couch. The alarm was going off within the bedroom until a tanned hand reached up from under the blankets on the bed next to the drawer the alarm sat atop of. The hand flopped on top of the drawer as it searched until it felt what it guessed to be the origin of the sound. The hand balled up into a fist and slammed on top of the alarm clock, causing it to stop making its infernal racket. The hand slipped off the alarm clock that read 5:30. It fell to the side of the bed as the owner of said arm pushed himself up from his position on his bed as he sat on the edge of the bed. The owner of the arm was a tan teenager around the age of 17. His spiky blonde hair that looked like it was weaved by pure gold sat upon his head as he ran a hand through it. He let out a loud yawn that echoed throughout his apartment, conveying the loneliness that he lived with. He got up from his bed and walked over to the curtains before he opened them as the sun made the figure easier to see. Standing at an impressive 6 feet 2 inches tall. His messy blonde hair fell to the nape of his neck with 2 bangs framing his face, and even with a few bangs being around his eyes. The front bangs fell down the front of his face, and split at the bridge of his nose. Think Ulquiorra's hair, but with the top of it being Naruto's with Naruto's coloring. His eyes were strange. It was rare to find someone who had heterochromic eyes. His right eye was a bright sapphire blue, whereas his left eye on the other hand was a lovely shade of emerald green. As though someone had taken a shard of both gems and round them to perfection and then placed them within the boy's eyes. His right eye though was peculiar. Mainly in the shape of the pupil. Most pupils were rounded in perfect circles that either enlarged or shrunk. His right eye's pupil was that of a slit pupil. Similar to that of a cat. Another strange thing was the green tattoo he had underneath said eye. It flowed down his face, stopping right at his chin. Giving it a look as though he had a lone tear running down his face. His body was lean and compacted, giving it a look as though his body was chiseled out of marble by the Greek goddesses themselves. His legs looked muscular and yet, like the rest of his body, they weren't overly muscular and looked to be thin. The muscles compacted from his years of training. Upon his chest, where his heart was located, sat what looked like yet another tattoo upon his body. This one was a Gothic number 4. Within his life the young teen was always avoided by people once they found out about the number that laid upon his chest. They believed he was a cursed child thanks to the fact that the number 4 shared the same character with death. True fact. This teen's name was Naruto Uzumaki. An orphan. Walking through his apartment, he grabbed a uniform that consisted of a black jacket with a dark green singlet that he would place under the jacket and a pair of black jeans with matching shoes. This was the uniform for Koe Academy students. He stopped and looked towards a photo that laid on his nightstand next to his bed. Within the photo stood a young Naruto around the age of 5. His eyes were the exact same, and a small glimpse of a black marking on the left side of his chest was visible thanks to his shirt being a bit too big for him. This proved that the number 4 was actually a birthmark on his body instead. Standing next to him was a young girl around the same age. Her arms were hanging over Naruto's shoulders. Her golden eyes stared blandly at the camera as no expression was shown on her face. Her blue hair with a dyed green fringe was pressed against Naruto's face as the girl had her head on his shoulder. Behind them stood a woman who had both of her hands on the 2 children's shoulders. She had chocolate brown eyes hidden behind some round glasses. A small smile was etched onto her face as she stared down at the 2 children. She was wearing a nun's outfit. Picking it up, he looked on the side of the photo to see a message. The message was from the nun within the photo. My little ball of sunshine and my blue-haired darling. Mother will always love you no matter how far apart we may be. Love your mother, Nono Yakushi. No matter how far, huh? I wonder how'd you react now, seeing as I have become the very thing you raised us to believe were evil, Naruto said, his voice not having a hint of emotion to it, betraying the small smile on his face. Having been raised in the orphanage since birth, Naruto always believed in what his mother told him. When he asked about his birth parents, Nono simply gave him a sad smile and held him close. She told him that the note he was left with states that he was loved and that his parents would want to be there. When he asked what was left on the night he arrived at the orphanage, he was told that all that was left was himself, a note, and a small piece of paper with his name on it. Naruto placed the photo down before looking over at a sword that laid next to his bed. Grabbing the hilt, Naruto pulled the blade out completely and held it in front of him. He stood in the middle of his bedroom in front of his bed as energy started to slowly flow off of him. The color of the energy was a charcoal black with a green hue. He felt, what he assumed was tears, flowing out of his eyes. Bringing a hand up, he found it to be a liquid the color of ink. The energy faded as the black liquid leaking from his eyes disappeared completely, leaving his right eye without such markings and for his left eye to still have its normal green mark. He focused on a voice that he heard every time he held the blade within his grasp. But before he could learn the name, the voice faded away. Embrace your despair and call thy name. Those were the words he always heard when he held the blade. Though the name he awaited to hear never came. Looking at the blade, he admired the fine edge of it and its quality craftsmanship. The blade was a normal-length katana that had a silver guard in the unique shape of an eye. Its silver handle was wrapped in an aquamarine cloth. Placing the blade within its pale white sheath, he swiped his hand from left to right as a small cut appeared within the air. Getting dressed within his uniform, Naruto grabbed the blade by the sheath and watched as the line split open, leaving a black void within his apartment. The blade disappeared as in the same black energy he was releasing moments ago. Placing his hands within his pockets, he walked into the void as it closed behind him. His threw a look at the photo on his nightstand before the void closed, swallowing him inside. Walking through the void, Naruto had time to think. If I'm right, the bastard will be coming any day now to try and make Rias his. I have to get stronger for her, he thought as he stopped and stood still within the void. Though she seems to believe that her new pawn can do anything. If only I could hear the name, then maybe I would be given enough strength. While Naruto's thoughts were plunged by his promise, he remembered the day he met her. Rias Gremory. Flashback. Naruto was wandering around Koe Academy. It was his 3rd year at Koe Academy, and yet he never bothered to remember the layout. He turned a corner and bumped into her. She was wearing the Koe Academy female uniform. A pleated white shirt hidden under a black vest with a shoulder cape. The red pleated skirt seemed to be a bit short as Naruto got a brief glimpse at her panties before he turned away. She had red hair that fell down her back, which Naruto found beautiful. Her eyes were a wonderful bluish green. Naruto helped her up and they walked to class together. As it turns out, they were in the same class. After a while they became the best of friends. But then tragedy struck as Naruto was killed by a demonic monster while walking home. He laid on the ground as a final wish came to his mind. I only wish to be able to tell Rias how much she means to me. After that he blacked out and awoke the very next day with Rias in his bed. She went on to explain as to how he was alive and to introduce him to the supernatural world. She explained that he was now a part of her peerage, serving as her second night piece. He was happy that he would be able to spend more time with Rias. Eventually he was introduced to the rest of Rias's peerage. The queen was Akino Himejima, a girl with violet eyes, long black hair that ended at her feet, tied together by an orange ribbon. She had a nice personality in which she cared for everyone else. But underneath the smile she always wore was a sadistic woman who enjoyed making others feel pain. She was the queen of Rias's peerage. He met Rias's rook, a small girl with white hair and golden eyes that stared at everything with the same boredom he had. She had a small cat-shaped clip in her hair. This was Kaneko Tujo, a first year. And then he met her final piece. His fellow knight Kiba Yuto. Kiba was a boy with blonde hair and a mole on the left side of his face. He was a kind boy who helped Naruto at first. After a while, all of them managed to break through the wall he had built and actually got to know the real Naruto. A boy with a strong heart, who wanted to protect what's dear to him. Though, the walls were soon rebuilt in a much stronger fashion when he came along. It was not long after Naruto had managed to manifest his sacred gear, which appeared in the form of a sword. With the manifestation, he gained a few abilities. He was able to fire a large, destructive, emerald green beam. A voice within his heaf told him it was called Siro. Next he was able to fire a quicker blast of energy from his hand. While not as strong as a Siro, the Bala, as the voice in his head told him the name, made up for it in pure speed. Speaking of speed, he also gained an ability called Sonido. It allowed him to disappear with the sound of a static pulse and reappear wherever he desired. This made his already enhanced speed from his night piece get pushed into overdrive. And then came a more passive ability that was always active. The Hiero. Basically, the Hiero gives him the ability to stop most attacks without receiving damage. If the damage is too great though, his Hiero minimizes the damage, leaving only a piece of clothing to be scratched if not destroyed. He also had another passive ability, one that was quite useful in situations where he couldn't escape damage. High-speed regeneration. He can heal any wound he had as long as it wasn't too severe. And then came his sensing ability, Pesquisa. He sends out a small energy pulse which his opponents can't detect, and it reveals where they are. Similar to how whales used echolocation to find their way in the ocean. He's tried to access the full power of his sacred gear, but to no success, as the power fades away before he could succeed in fully awakening it. Though he was always left with the same message. Embrace your despair and call thy name. Naruto realized that he's never felt enough despair within his life to truly experience despair. Though he can feel as though he's close now thanks to Rias' new peerage member who took all 8 pawns. Issei Hayato. Naruto hated him, he took Rias' attention, the attention of the girl who he had feelings for. All Issei cared about were her boobs and looks. Thankfully Naruto still had the rest of the peerage as Kiba tolerated Issei but got annoyed with his perverted antics. Kaneko outright hated him and even abused him sometimes, usually hitting him with an object, which always earned her a pat on the head from Naruto. And Akino only saw him as a little brother and often teased him, but she tended to spend more time with Naruto more than anyone. Though Issei developed a small superiority complex as he thought that he was amazing for 2 reasons. 1, because he took all 8 pawn pieces. And 2, because he had the boosted gear. The boosted gear was a sacred gear with the Welsh dragon drag within it. With his sacred gear, Issei would be able to slay gods. Naruto laughed as Issei, even with his sacred gear, still tended to make large mistakes he would have to clean up. The voice within Naruto's head, the one he thinks is his sacred gear, always said something that only Naruto could hear. Foolishness. No matter how many times you boost, 0 times a number will always end up being 0. Then Rias' attention was grabbed again, and besides Akino, she tended to ignore her other pieces as well. This time though she had brought in a blonde girl from the church. Her name was Asia Argento. She was excommunicated due to the fact her sacred gear, Twilight Healing, was able to heal anyone from all factions. After some fights where Naruto would be struggling and he would be slightly injured, she would try to heal to him only for Naruto to stop her and explain his high-speed regeneration ability. Naruto didn't hate this girl, in fact like the others, she was one he liked a lot. She was like the little sisters he had when he was still living in the orphanage. Usually, he stayed back and tried to protect her within a fight, but when someone else took over with protecting her, Naruto quickly eliminated the threat. Out of the entire peerage, Naruto only had a problem with Issei. He basically despised the boy and couldn't stand him. He was indifferent to Rias now, and the others were the only ones he cared about really. Though when Issei and Asia weren't around, Rias explained her reasoning for focusing only on Issei. Asia was so she was welcomed, and Issei was so that he could break her contract. She was in an arranged marriage with a man called Riser Phoenix. Naruto could tell that she absolutely despised the man as much as he did Issei. With this in mind, Naruto made a choice to try and awaken his sacred gear's full power to save his king. Flashback end. Naruto looked into the void of his way of travel. The Garganta. Another ability granted even though he never fully awakened his sacred gear. He creates a rift which allowed him to appear anywhere he wanted. Though time was a bit off, as when he exits it's usually an hour or 2 after he entered it. Continuing his walk through the Garganta, Naruto detected a power within it. Looking around, he saw a girl with black hair walking in the opposite direction of himself. Ignoring the girl, he continued his walk as the Garganta opened up in front of him. The girl looked back at him with confusion on his face. A being that in touch with despair, and yet he can't use his power to the fullest. Why hasn't he gone mad with power yet? What holds him to the realm of sanity? The girl, though, before she disappeared, no traces of her being there. Occult research room. The atmosphere within the research room was tense as a blonde-haired man in a white suit stood in front of Rias with Issei on the floor. He had a sick smile on his face as he stared at Rias's body. Standing in between both of them was a beautiful woman with waist-length silver tresses. She was wearing clothing in the style of a Victorian maid. This was Graphia Lucifuge. Her ice blue eyes stared at the 2 clan heirs with indifference. Though she had one thought plaguing her mind. Where's Naruto-kun? He should have been here. Rias-sama is gonna challenge Riser-sama to a raiding game at this rate. And her worst fears came to light as Rias declared that she would fight Riser in a raiding game. Riser agreed and said that if he was to win, then the wedding would be moved up by 2 weeks. Rias agreed and Graphia could do nothing but agree as she was only there to oversee the meeting. Sending Riser's peerage and Rias's own to the Dime Zion where the fight would take place, she let out a heavy sigh as the fight started. Hearing a groaning coming from behind her, she turned around to see Naruto walking out with a confused look on his face. Seeing his small-time tutor, Naruto asked her a question. Graphia-sensei? What are you doing here? Hello Naruto-kun, how's my favorite student? Graphia asked as she tried to steer the conversation away from what she feels would break him. I'm good, sensei. Studying has been going well after our last session. But now answer my question. Why are you here? He said as a frown appeared on his face. Sighing to herself, Graphia sat down and patted the open seat next to her. Naruto took the offered spot and watched as she pulled his head down onto her lap. Giving him a sad smile, Graphia decided that he should know. Naruto-kun, the reason I'm here is because Riser-sama decided that he would come and get Rias-sama as he was getting impatient. He what? Naruto asked as he stared at the woman. I'm sorry, Naruto, but Rias went against him and challenged him to a rating game. It's going in as we speak. Her voice had a sad undertone as she stared at the boy who looked upset. So she believes that fool will be able to do anything, he said as his voice took on a tone that made Grafia shiver. Foolishness, I'll be leaving now, Naruto said as he stood up and disappeared with his sonito. Grafia sat there with her eyes closed as she felt bad for the boy. She opened her eyes when the two clan heirs returned, with Rias having a depressed look on her face and Riser having the same sick grin on his face as before. Shaking her head, she watched as Riser disappeared with the rest of his peerage while Rias sat down at her desk while the others looked at the ground. Rias-sama, the wedding is within 2 weeks' time. I suppose you prepare yourself, Grafia said as she disappeared. Meanwhile, Rias had one thought on her mind that she would put into place tonight. This is the only way, she thought, staring at Issei. Meanwhile, the others disappeared, going to see where Naruto may be to talk with him. Issei went home while Asia followed after Akino and the others, while Rias sat at her desk as the sun set in the distance. Meanwhile, with Naruto. He was currently in his room as he stared at the unsheathed blade as the voice within his head played over and over. What do you mean, embrace my despair and call your name? I can never hear your name, he thought. Then you are yet to embrace your despair fully. Until you do, you'll never heal my name, the voice thought back to him. Betrayal is the key, Naruto, the voice said before it disappeared completely. Naruto resheathed the blade as the others appeared in his room. Looking towards them, he gave them a sad smile as he stared at them. Akino walked over and sat by him. You lost, didn't you? Naruto said, instead of asking. Yeah. Naruto, I'm sorry, if only, she tried to say. There is no reason to apologize. It's not your fault. Rias believed in Issei too much so that she was hoping that he would be able to stop Riser. Such foolishness. I will go and talk to her. Stay here. With those said, Naruto opened a garganta and walked through it. Once he walked into it, Akino went to stop him only for the garganta to close rather violently. She pulled her hand back and looked at the space in which it previously stood. She pulled her hand to her chest as a frown appeared on her face. With Naruto above Issei's house, the garganta opened up in the middle of the air above Ko Academy. Naruto stepped out and saw that it was now night time. Staring at the moon, he found himself entranced by the glow of it. Activating his pesquisa, he clicked his teeth as he found Rias right where he thought she would be. Inside her pawn's house. Using sonito, he appeared down by Issei's bedroom window and was about to open it when he heard something that shattered him completely. Issei, Rias called desperately. Please take my virginity. She finished as Naruto opened the window and found Rias, pinning Issei to the ground with her top undone. Rias looked at Naruto with a shocked look as Issei was too busy leering at her breast. Rias tried to explain herself only for a pair of wings to burst from Naruto's back. Rias gasped as the wings weren't that of a normal devil's which formed from the waist. These ones formed at his back and were a lot larger. They were similar to that of bat wings. They formed from his back and grew out. They had black fur at the base of them and little hooks on the top of them. She went to move, only for Naruto to move away from the window and fly away with a powerful flap of his new wings. She would have followed if not for Grafia appearing with a cold glare on her face, directed at the perv staring at Rias. Grafia, scold me later, please, you have to find Naruto. He found me about to give myself to Issei and he just left, Rias said as she knew how much the woman cared about Naruto. When Rias would walk in on their study lessons after she introduced him to her brother the day he was reincarnated, she saw that the woman really enjoyed Naruto's company. She saw a small look of horror appear on the woman's face before she freezed Issei completely. She gave Rias a stern glare before she disappeared trying to find Naruto. Meanwhile, in the forests north of Ko, Naruto was flying through the air as his energy flowed out of him, forming a cone of sorts around his head. Seeing an open field, he landed as the energy continued to flow off of him. He felt tears staining his eyes as he tried to rub them away only to find the familiar blacken on his hands. He watched as the nails on his fingers blackened out into a dark void as a line appeared stopping at the knuckle joint. He grabbed head as the power flowed out of him in a greater amount, causing him to lose control as it flared out and destroyed the trees around. Akino and the others were flying around the area as they chased after Naruto the moment he left. They saw smoke in the distance and small traces of black energy flow out everywhere. Looking at Kiba, who was holding Asia as she was still getting used to flying, and a worried Kaneko who wore a usually stoic face, she nodded to them as they all took off in the direction of the energy. Meanwhile, Naruto was on his hands and knees as his power was becoming too much to control for him. Hearing someone step into the clearing, he looked up, showing 2 black lines flowing down his face as his one blue eye now had a slit pupil. He saw it was the girl who somehow made it into his garganta. She had black hair that flowed down her body as dull gray eyes stared at him with a small speck of curiosity. She was wearing a set of clothes in which Naruto noted were that of a gothic Lolita fashion. She also had 2 X-shaped pieces of tape on her visible chest. Naruto called out to her, begging her to stay away as she stared at him, and walked closer. She ignored the energy waves that moved towards her only to miss completely. Eventually, she stood in front of him before she laid in the grass to become eye level with him. How has it being like yourself, one who has been wrapped within despair, while holding some rays of hope? Only just now feel the overwhelming power of your sacred gear, she said as her monotone voice froze him in place. With the amount of power you're releasing now, you should be able to fully activate your sacred gear, he heard her say again. Fully activate it. He gave long pauses as his powers raged more. Yes, with your power raging as it is, you probably have reached a stage where you can finally use it. Dig into yourself and release its power, she ordered as Naruto heard the voice one more. Embrace your despair, was first. While those words echoed throughout his head, he was remembering how Rias acted before she recruited Issei. When he realized that he loved her. Call thy name, was next. With those ones bouncing in his head, he stood up as his hair grew in length to match Rias's own, only for it to darken to a shade darker than Akino's. Murcielago, was the last thing heard as his sword appeared in his hand as his energy stopped flowing as the young girl stared at him. His wings having disappeared, his hair having gone back to how it normally looked only in a pitch black color. And the green marking under his left eye was now mirrored on the right side of his face as his right eye turned green. His singlet, that he was still wearing, split in the middle as if cut by a blade, revealing the number 4 on his chest as the black and green energy leaked from it. A small line of what seemed to be black lipstick appeared on his top lip. Akino and her group along with Grafia appeared in the clearing as Naruto turned and stared at them with dead eyes. No emotions were shown on his face as he raised his blade towards them as the energy returned full force. Everyone, even Grafia, had to bring their arms up to cover their face with Kaneko holding Asia as the energy seemed to try and push them away. Though the girl next to him mainly stood still and looked at Naruto. Embrace my despair, he said, pausing as the energy flowed violently off the blade. And call its name, he said again as a circle of energy formed at his feet. Toseis Murcielago, were the final words spoken as the energy at his feet exploded upwards, sending everyone bar the black-haired girl flying. The others all looked up to see that Naruto had undergone a complete change. His uniform had turned into a long white dress that ended at his feet. Instead of his feet being covered by a pair of sneakers, black shoes were in place that had a small tuft of black fur on the back. The black markings on his fingers reappeared as his nails grew slightly. His hair was now at his waist with the moon giving it a shine as though it absorbs all traces of light that touches it. On his head now sat a helmet with a pointed tip that stopped at the base of his skull in the back. It had 4 spikes sticking out of the top with 2 of them resembling horns. His back now had 2 wings flowing out of his shoulder blades as they were spread out completely, making them look like that of an eagle's in length while having more resemblance to that of a bat's. His green markings now became a dark black as though he has been crying black tears. What shocked them the most was that he had a hole in the center of his chest with the same black markings flowing down his chest while also spreading out. They watched as he looked over his body and gave his new wings a stretch. They looked as he raised a hand before a green spear appeared. Twirling it around, he dispersed it before turning towards the girl who was still standing next to him. You helped me awaken my power. Why? He asked as his voice matched the girl's own. Because you interested me. A being who was orphaned at birth, with his life being filled with despair. Naruto Uzumaki, child whose mother died giving life to him and also whose father died due to an unknown disease. Despair has been a large part of your life, and I can see you use your despair to become stronger. You claim you found your full power, and yet I feel as though you can push beyond your current power, she said as she opened a portal. And you can help me realize my true power? Naruto asked as she raised her hand, which was radiating with energy. I will take you to a place in between worlds where you will be able to become stronger than you know. All you need to do is raise your hand and grab mine. I will give you a mark which will allow you to exist within it. For if you had no form of magical protection, you would be ripped apart by the nothingness within. This mark is used from my own energy. I was born in the place, and it is where I will help you become stronger, she said as Naruto raised his hand towards her own. Tell me your name, as I accept your deal so that I may become stronger. Naruto told her as his hand took her small ones within his own, an infinity symbol appearing on his right hand. I am a being who was born in the place I'm taking you. The dimensional gap. I am the infinite dragon, also known as the Ouroboros dragon Ophis. Come with me, Naruto, and you'll be able to fully realize your power. She introduced herself as they both walked towards the portal. Though stopping short, Naruto looked at the others with a blank expression before he focused solely on Grafia. Tell Rias that after her wedding, I will no longer be part of her peerage. I will want my own peerage so that I am not tied down by her. With his words spoken, Naruto walked into the portal with Ophis following after him as the others stood still in shock by what he said. After a moment of silence, everyone stood still as they tried to comprehend what happened. The silence was cut as Asia started sobbing. It's my fault, isn't it? 'Cause I made Rias-sama focus completely on me. Naruto hated me just like he hates Issei, she said with tears falling from her eyes. Naruto didn't hate you, Asia. In fact, when me and him were alone, we talked about you. How you've grown, and even though he never showed it, Naruto saw you as a little sister. He truly cared about you, Asia. He never wanted you to get hurt, Akino said as she walked over to the girl and pulled her into a hug. The fault doesn't belong to any of you. It belongs to Rias-sama, Grafia said as she turned around getting ready to leave. What do you mean, Grafia-sama? Kiba asked her. Naruto has loved Rias since they first met. Call it a love at first sight thing, but he did. He appeared at the window to Issei Hayato's room and went to talk with her only to see her basically giving herself to Issei. Naruto felt his heart shatter, and that's what caused this to happen. Guess we can only wait until the day of the wedding to see how he's changed, Grafia explained as she disappeared. The others all looked towards the space where the portal used to be before they all turned away and walked back to Naruto's apartment to see if they could find anything on him. With the group at Naruto's apartment, everyone walked in as Naruto had told them where he left the spare key in case he ever locked himself out. When they heard of him having a spare key, they laughed as they could never see Naruto locking himself out. Entering his living room, everyone sat down as Kaneko went to find anything considering her enhanced sense of smell. Walking into his room, she was unable to find anything until she noticed the photo on the nightstand next to his bed. Picking it up, she went back to the others to show them her discovery. Akino looked at the photo and she had to admit that he was really cute as a child, though she was surprised to see that he was actually raised within a church-run orphanage. Looking at the note on the side, she found herself wondering as to how long Naruto stayed at the orphanage and why he left. Looking out towards the moon, whose light shone into the apartment thanks to Kiba opening the curtains, she wondered how Naruto will be once he returns. Naruto-kun, when you come back, I promise you that I will make you forget about Rias. By changing your focus to myself, she thought with a slight lick of her lips. Meanwhile, with Naruto and Ophis within the dimensional gap. Remember, Naruto can exist in it thanks to Ophis. After exiting the portal, Naruto looked around as he saw that the dimensional gap was a place with a myriad of colors. It was a beautiful sight for him. This place, it's full of nothingness, yet it looks so beautiful, he said as Ophis floated in front of him. Yes, the silence within here truly is a wonderful thing. Come Naruto, your training begins now, she said as Naruto was dropped onto a slab of concrete as Naruto felt his power halved. You must be able to restore your power to how it originally was. Once you do, when the effects of the spell I placed on you fade, you'll be twice as strong, she said plainly. And how do I do that? He asked. Quite simple, really. She spoke as a stray devil appeared. Kill the stray devil and your power will slowly return, she finished. Fine then, he said as he stood to his feet and formed his spear. I'll kill it and become stronger. With those words spoken, Naruto charged the devil ready to kill. Time skip 2 weeks. Day of the wedding. It was the worst day of her life. Rias was currently sitting in a room wearing a traditional white dress for her special day. Hearing the door open, she turned to see a young girl with blonde hair tied into 2 drills. She was wearing an orange dress with the symbol of the House of Phoenix of the back. This was Riser's little sister Revel Phoenix, his bishop. She looked at the sad-looking Rias with a forced smile. Rias-sama, it's time, she said. Thank you, Revel. I'll be there soon, she said as Revel exited the room. I'm sorry, Naruto. Please forgive me, she thought as she walked out of the room. Standing at the altar wearing a black suit was Riser. His face showed how happy he was that he finally got the chance to make Rias his own. Looking over to the side in the back of the room, he saw Rias's peerage with Issei looking annoyed. Hearing the doors open, he watched as Rias walked in with a depressed look on her face. When she stood next to him, he smiled at her, causing her to look away. Though before they could start the ceremony, Ophis appeared in between the both of them and pushed Riser to the center of the room. Looking towards the girl, he gave an annoyed growl before he shouted at her. Who are you and why are you interrupting this wedding? Just because, she said plainly. Why, you little? He grounded out as he raised his right hand as fire gathered around it. I wouldn't do that if I was you. A voice from behind him spoke as something wrapped around his neck. Everyone looked and saw that the thing holding him was a black tail. Following it back to the person, they found a being whose arms and legs were covered in black fur while his feet had 4 claws on the front of his foot with a 5th at his heel. His hands had long black nails about an inch in length and sharp enough to cut through bones. Rias and her peerage saw the familiar bat-like wings on the person's back. The long black hair also struck a familiar chord within them. On his head were 2 long ears that was similar to a bat's, possibly giving him enhanced hearing. His eyes were a bright yellow with a slit pupil. The being's cold look was only enhanced by the dark green background. Though the thing that revealed his identity was the hole in his chest that leaked black ink down his chest and the 2 black lines flowing down his eyes. If you try to hurt Ulfus-chan, I will have to hurt you badly, the owner of the voice said before his tail moved and threw Riser into the wall. They watched as Ulfus walked over to the being and stood next to him as everyone who saw her before noticed she changed. She now stood at a wonderful 5'8". She was still wearing a gothic Lolita dress, but now she had a black tank top on covering her chest, which were now matching Akino's in size. Her body was slim, which lead a round ass which had a few men staring. Out of her hair was the tips of her ears, showing them to be pointy. Thank you for that, but I think you should hurry up and do what you came here to do, she said as the being next to her was enveloped in a dark green energy that caused Akino and the other's eyes to widen in shock. Once the energy faded, Naruto stood in front of everyone wearing a long-sleeved white trench coat with 2 tail ends sticking out on the left and right sides. Wearing a pair of white pants and a pair of black dress shoes. He looked at Riser with an uninterested gaze, causing Riser to become pissed. What are you doing here, low class? Riser asked. Fulfilling a promise I made, was all Naruto said. I see, you want to have Rias for yourself, don't you? We all know how much you love her. You're doing this FO, Riser tried to say before Naruto cut him off. Foolishness. I could care less about Rias Gremory. I'm only doing this as I made a promise to myself. A promise that I will keep. Once this is over, I will no longer be under her servitude. This is my last job as her knight, he announced to everyone as his sword appeared in his hand as he pointed it towards Riser. The same look that made Riser feel as though he was an insect within Naruto's eyes. Riser Phoenix, I challenge you to a rating game to release Rias Gremory from the contract between you two, he declared, getting a round of gasps from everyone. Meanwhile, standing next to Graphia was the older brother of Rias Gremory, Surzex Lucifer, one of the 4 Mao. He had originally wanted Issei to oppose the marriage and challenge Riser, but this worked as well. He turned to look at Issei only to see him joining in on wanting to fight for Rias, though instead of wanting to free her from the contract, he wanted to take Riser's place. Looking at the queen of his peerage, he saw her staring at Naruto with a smile. Do you think he can win? He asked, referring to Naruto. He is my student Surzex, and I can tell that Naruto has truly become stronger. Maybe in the future strong enough to fight against you, she said with a smile of pride. Okay then, he said before walking over to the 3 men, not noticing the woman pull out a queen piece before gesturing Naruto to come towards her. Hey there everyone. Naruto, Issei, do you truly want to help? He asked them as he stared at the 2. Naruto lowered his sword and gave a slight nod before he saw Graphia's gesture, while Issei had a more vocal approach. Of course. Bucho's virginity belongs to me alone. With that said, a long awkward silence sat throughout the room as everyone stared at Issei. Fool, was all Naruto said before giving Surzex a place where they could battle, by sending a flash of energy to the red-haired man which contained an image of an area in which they could fight. After that he used Sonito to appear next to Graphia, who teleported them away. Looking at Riser, he saw the boy staring at the remaining boy with pure hatred in his eyes. Well, Riser, what do you say to this? A battle between yourself, the wielder of the boosted gear, and an unknown variable? He asked with a smile. I will accept their challenges, Lucifer-sama. But once I win, I will have them both executed. Riser spoke, his arrogance lacing every one of his words. As Naruto reappeared within a blue seal as Graphia pocketed something and stood next to him with a smile on her face. He seems stronger, Akino stated as Rias moved towards them with Graphia following. Rias-sama. The group bowed as their king stood next to them. Do you think either of them will win? She asked as she noticed she couldn't feel her night peace within Naruto at all. Personally, I believe that Naruto-kun will try and eliminate Issei-sen first before he moves on to Riser-sama, Graphia said as she reached the group. Also, Rias-sama, I want you to sign this. she said, pulling out a note and giving it to Rias. Nothing too big to worry about, Rias-sama, Graphia said, hoping the girl would just sign it. Thankfully, after Graphia handed her a pen, Rias signed her signature on the sheet without looking at the sheet of paper. If she had, she would have seen that it was actually a legal binding document titled Documentation of Trade between Graphia Lucifuge and Rias Gremory for Rias's Knight Naruto Uzumaki. Taking the paper and pocketing it, Graphia smiled as the document allowed Graphia to take Naruto into her peerage as a queen while Rias gets back the knight piece she used to bring Naruto back. Okay then. Alright everyone. A raiding game is about to occur between these three young devils. The heir of the Phoenix clan Riser. The one who wields the boosted gear Issei Hayato. And Naruto Uzumaki, a child whose powers remain unknown to us. If Naruto wins, Rias Gremory will be released from her contract. If Issei wins, he will take Riser's place. And if Riser wins, both of the aforementioned boys will be killed. Surzex declared before the three boys disappeared in a red flash. Let the raiding game for Rias Gremory's fate begin, he said, happily believing in the two boys. With the fighters. For the battle stage, think Las Noches canopy. Riser and Issei were teleported onto what they thought was a rooftop. Looking around, they found 4 pillars standing in the center of the rooftop. Looking out into the distance, all they found was a desert with white sand and a black sky. So have you finally gotten used to the area? I would hope so, Naruto said as he stared down onto the two boys with the moon behind him. What are you doing up there? Too scared to come down and fight me? Riser taunted as Naruto pointed his blade down towards the other participants. Scared of you? Utter foolishness. I have not come across a being in which I fear. You are not something that can bring fear into me no matter how hard you try, Naruto said as they all felt a strong force pushing down on them. This is my sacred gear. Its full name is Despair's Onslaught Murcielago. And the way I access it completely is as simple as this, he said as his energy flowed out as the others were rooted to their spot. Toseis Murcielago. With those words, Naruto entered his release state. His white coat appearing with his helmet placing itself on his head. The other two stood in shock of the raw power which flowed off the boy. They watched as a green spear appeared in his right hand as Riser brought out his flames while Issei summoned his own sacred gear. Calm yourselves. Hold your stance. Don't let your guard down even for a moment, he said calmly before he appeared in front of Riser with his spear ready to remove his head. Riser's eyes widened as Naruto moved his arm trying to finish the match already. Using his flames as defense, a large green explosion occurred as Naruto appeared next to Issei, and using his wings, slapped him away without hesitation. Remember, Issei, we are not on the same side. If given the chance, I will eliminate you completely, he said as he looked towards Riser. And you, I'm impressed. Using your fire at the last second to divert my attack. If you hadn't done that, your head would be rolling at my feet. He finished as Riser looked at him, a trail of blood flowing from his chest. I'm going to enjoy killing you both, he spoke as Issei walked back to them within his armor. Sighing to himself, Naruto decided to ask them a question as it was already starting to annoy him. Tell me something. Riser Issei. Why do you fight against an opponent who you have no chance of defeating? Because there is no way that I, a pure-breed devil, can ever lose against a reincarnated piece of shit like you, Riser said as his flames increased. And I have to, for Bucho's sake. I will win her over in this fight and then, she will give me herself as a present for winning this fight, Issei declared. Both of you. What you've both said is nothing but utter foolishness spread by those who have never known the true despair of defeat, of loss. Naruto spoke as his eyes closed as a frown appeared. Opening his eyes, they saw his eyes were now exactly like they were when he arrived. They watched as his coat started to peel away as his energy flowed forth. I will teach you the true meaning of despair. I will crush all hopes of winning you have and grind them to dust beneath my feet. Behold, Riser and Issei, this is what true despair looks like, he said as his energy fully enveloped him before slowly fading away. Despair's Onslaught Murcielago. Balance Breaker. Segunda Etapa, he said as he stared at the two boys. Before they could even think of retorting, they felt a dark force holding them tightly as cold shivers were sent throughout their body. As if the despair radiating off their opponent had frozen their nerves completely. Issei, getting his nerves back, charged Naruto and launched an energy attack in which Naruto blocked with a spear. When he tried to circle around to get another shot, he was met with Naruto firing a Siro off without moving his head from looking at Riser. Taking his attention of the Phoenix clan heir for a second, Naruto looked towards Issei, who had a bit of his armor chipped away. He went to turn back to Riser only to have said launch a fireball at him from behind. A large explosion occurred, forcing Issei to fly into the air while Riser laughed. How's that? The tables have turned and now I'll be the victor. He laughed until he heard a voice from behind him. Unfortunately for you, I can't allow that to happen. Turning around, he saw Naruto, who was missing his left arm, having sacrificed it to block the attack. Raising his remaining hand as the other reformed, he focused his power into the tips of his fingers as a black ball formed. That was a nice attack, now let me show you mine, he said as the ball grew in size till it resembled a golf ball. Zero Oscuras, was what Riser heard before he was enveloped in the black zero. Turning toward Issei, he watched as the boy brought his hand forward and gathered energy into it. Bringing his hand forward while he formed another Zero Oscuras as he noticed Riser falling to the ground, he kept Issei in his sights. I will end you here and now, Naruto declared, the fight boring him already. I will win, I won't let you have Bucho, Issei declared as he boosted himself again. How many times must I say it? I don't care about Rias, have her after this if you want, I won't stop you. I'm simply making you realize how far beneath me you are, Naruto said before they both launched their attacks, with Naruto's easily pushing Issei's back until a large explosion occurred, knocking Issei out cold. No matter how many times you boost yourself, you will never be able to fight against me, Naruto told him before he turned back to Riser, who stood up. I will ask again, why do you stand against the opponent where you have no chance for victory? Naruto asked, confused as Riser flew into the air above him, and as Issei was removed to have his injuries fixed. Because I am Riser Phoenix, a high-class devil. I will regenerate all wounds you give me, I will be stronger than you. I am destined to be stronger than you, a filthy no-named low-class reincarnated devil, Riser shouted as he launched his strongest attack at Naruto. Bringing his wing in front of him, Naruto let the fireball impact completely engulf him as he protected his main body parts with his wings. Riser started laughing as he believed that Naruto simply stood still as he gave up, only for his laughter to die as Naruto's wing swung out, returning to its normal position as the fireball was erased completely by the power behind the swing. Bringing his palms together, as a green light appeared within the small gap. Pulling them apart so both hanged at his sides, a light green javelin with a smoky tail appeared. Grabbing it at the middle, Naruto spun it around before he looked towards Riser. Lanza del Relampago, Naruto said as he prepared to throw it. What's that gonna do? Riser asked, slightly fearful of the javelin with a flame-like tail and arrowhead. Just watch. Don't move, for I would rather this not go off at close range, Naruto said as he threw the javelin-like weapon at Riser. The javelin moved past Riser, just missing his shooter before it continued into the distance. Riser watched as it traveled into the distance until it had contact with a sand dune quite some distance away. His eyes grew to enormous proportions as once it made contact, it triggered a large explosion. The blast just exploded upwards, leaving it to form in a cylindrical shape as it grew to be 7 times higher than the building they were standing on. He felt the shockwave that came flying back towards the last two fighters. It blew the sand up from the ground, causing it to slam into the building and fly up so that it nearly touched the two of them as it fell back to the ground. He watched as it all calmed down before he turned to see Naruto calmly staring at him as another attack formed within his hand. I missed. Oh well, it always was hard to control, Naruto said as he prepared to throw another one. Riser, however, created a fireball and launched it at Naruto, whose yellow eyes narrowed at the sight. Using his Sonito to get behind Riser, Naruto charged his black Zero as his tail wrapped around Riser's neck, quickly placing his hand at Riser's right eye as the Zero completely formed. You're both lucky and unlucky to be a phoenix right now. Lucky because you'll no doubt survive. But unlucky cause this is going to hurt, was all Naruto said before the vision in Riser's right was enveloped in darkness. Everyone within the wedding realm watched and was shocked at how Naruto helped no hesitation to do such a thing. They watched as his tail moved and threw Riser away as said boy held the now empty, bleeding eye socket, standing across from Naruto as his eye continued to bleed. Give up, Riser. You have no hope of winning against me, Naruto said as he stared calmly at the boy. No, I won't. He stubbornly declined as he pulled his hand away. At the rate you're going, I'm going to be left with no choice but to try and kill you, Naruto said as he aimed to throw another javelin. You'll die trying, low-class scum, Riser screamed as he threw a fireball the size of a tank at Naruto, who simply threw his own attack. Everyone watched as the attack pierced the fire and dispersed it completely before it continued on its way towards Riser before it connected with his body. The blast exploded with Riser inside it. After it faded away, Naruto watched as what was left of Riser fell to the ground. Following after him, Naruto appeared on the ground next to Riser. Looking at the boy, he decided to ask him a question. Riser Phoenix, do you surrender this match? And do take into account your current situation and how fast I can make the attack that put you into this state. He added at the end, wondering if the boy would give up. I surrender. He breathed out as he only had one arm, half of his body missing and both of his legs missing. Good. Was all Naruto said as he and Rias were returned to where everyone was gathered. Breathing out as his eyes returned to their normal color until his balance breaker vanished, leaving him in his normal sacred gear form. His entire sacred gear faded away, leaving him in his white clothes as his sword disappeared. Naruto turned towards Akino and the others and gave them a nod before looking to see Grafia walking towards him. Their eyes met and an unspoken question was relayed between them. As Grafia handed something to him, she was about to send him to Ajuka only for Rias to stop them. Thank you, Naruto. I can't ever read, she tried to say only to be cut off. Foolish girl, I don't care what you say. Just know this. He said don't make the same mistake you did with me with your next knight. And unless I'm ordered to by my new king, I will not help you. I truly refuse to be under your command any longer. This is goodbye, my foolish former king, he said before throwing the piece at her. Your new king? She exclaimed, confused. Yes, allow me to properly introduce myself now. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, the queen of the peerage of Lady Grafia Lucifuge. The number on my chest has nothing in regards to placing. I am her espada, Naruto declared as he stood next his new king. What? Grafia is your new king? But I didn't sign anything giving my permission for the trade, Rias declared as she tried to think if she did such a trade. Actually, Rias-sama, you did. The paper I got you to sign earlier was in fact a paper regarding you trading Naruto to me in return of your piece. If I didn't trick you like that, then Naruto would have probably gone rouge, Grafia explained as she stood next to her queen. With those words spoken, Naruto went to leave only for Lady Phoenix to stop him. I'm sorry for any disgrace I have shown your clan. Naruto apologized only to hear a soft laugh coming from her. Naruto. I don't care about that. You put up an impressive fight, and not to mention, though unknown, you truly held yourself as strong as possible to show yourself to be worthy of being the queen of the strongest queen, she said as Naruto smiled oily at the praise. I assume you and Grafia are on your way to receive your evil pieces and for Ajuka to perform the high-class ceremony? She added on, wanting to know if he would work for her plan. You would be correct in that assumption, Lady Phoenix, Naruto said respectfully. Naruto, I want you to do a favor for me. While you are no longer directly connected to the Gremories, this can in fact build good relations between our clan, she said with a smile as Naruto looked at her. What would the favor be, Lady Phoenix? Naruto asked as Lady Phoenix called Revel over to her. What I would want from you, Naruto, is to take Revel as your bishop. I will give Rias one of my empty bishop pieces, while Revel would become yours, she said as Revel looked at Naruto. Naruto gestured for her to move closer to him. When she did as such, her eyes widened as Naruto's right moved towards her. She watched as it got closer to her before she closed her eyes only to feel a small weight on her head. Opening her eyes, she saw him staring at her with a light smile on his face as Naruto petted her head. Revel Phoenix. If you decide that you want to become one of my members after I get my pieces, then I will protect you from those who would try to hurt you. If not, then so be it, he said as he brought his hand away from her. I will make you strong, all I ask is that you stay by my side. With that said, he backed away as he wanted her to decide. You're gonna need someone to help manage your peerage so that you won't bother your king constantly with things. I'll do it, she said as she smiled. Thank you, Revel-san, Naruto said as his king came over to the both of them. Naruto, it's time to go, she said as Naruto nodded while he looked at Revel, who nodded. Naruto, Grafia, and Revel left as they had to meet with Ajuka to get Naruto his own set while everyone else tried to comprehend the events that have occurred today. Ajuka's lab. So tell me, young devil, the reason as to why you should be given a peerage. A young man who looked to be in his early 20s asked as he ran a hand through his green hair while the other was within the pocket of his white jeans. I want a peerage, so that should I find people who I can come to trust, I will want them to join me so that I will be able to keep them away from coming close to the despair I have felt. Ajuka-sama, Naruto said as he remembered the blue-haired girl from when he was younger. Unknown to him, he was getting a smile from both of the girls with him. That is a wonderful answer. I will now start the ceremony to make you a high-class devil, the now named Ajuka said. Sitting down in front of him, Naruto closed his eyes as the ceremony began. Once it was over, Naruto opened his eyes to find Ajuka holding a king piece in front of him. Taking the piece and placing it inside himself, he saw a green flash as Ajuka showed him the rest of his set. 2 pieces have mutated. A rook and a bishop. Naruto, good luck with your life from now on. I can't wait to see where you go. Ajuka said as Naruto stood up before grabbing the non-mutation bishop and did the ceremony to welcome Revel into his peerage. And Naruto, Ajuka said, getting his attention once he was done. I want you to do me a favor, he said as Naruto looked him in his purple eyes while Ravik stood next to him. What is it, Ajuka-sama? Naruto asked. There's a place that I want you to investigate for me. Consider it a vacation, really, Ajuka said with a small smile looking at the boy. Where is this place, Ajuka-sama? Naruto asked. It's a small set of islands just east of Japan. You'll have to take a boat which I'll have ready for you by tomorrow, Ajuka said, smiling. And this place is called? Naruto asked, getting a bit impatient. The Isles of Basiria. It's a place that humans can't enter due to the energy hiding the place, while devils are easily able to find it as they can get through the energy properly, Ajuka explained. I will pack my stuff when I return home. Thank you for this chance, Ajuka-sama, Naruto said, bowing before he, Graphia, and Revel left. Appearing at Lucifer's castle, Naruto and Revel wished Graphia a good night as he opened a garganta, getting ready to leave only for her to stop him. While you have problems with Rias-sama, do know you can come here if you ever need to talk. After all, Milika-sama does enjoy having you here. And I enjoy having you here as well, Graphia said as she planted a small kiss on Naruto's cheek. What was that for? He exclaimed, shocked. I thought you were married to Surzek-sama, he shouted as the woman laughed. No, Naruto. Me and Surzek-sama dated, but we never truly got together. We split up after the war was over. He has his wife who is Milika-sama's true mother, Graphia explained as a blush came over Naruto's face. Oh, you're blushing, Naruto-kun. Have you been having naughty thoughts? She teased as Naruto walked into his garganta quickly with Revel following him. She laughed to herself before she walked inside Lucifer's castle. Human world. Meanwhile, Naruto and Revel had just appeared in his room. He told Revel that he could sleep on the couch if she stayed. She refused and told him that she'd be over in the morning to wake him up. After she left, and once his blush died down and he looked at himself in a mirror, I thought I couldn't feel emotions anymore after I reached my balance breaker. Wasn't that a price I had to pay? He asked himself as Ophis appeared behind him. Your price was not being rid of emotions but instead having them dulled. Your emotions are a part of you and you can't be rid of them, she explained as she grabbed his hand and dragged him to his bed. Throwing him on it and laying next to him, she closed her eyes as the night silence lulled her to sleep. Looking down at the former lowly who is still leagues above him is strength, Naruto let out a quiet sigh as she cuddled into him. Smiling, he remembered that this is how they usually fell asleep together within the dimensional gap. Deciding to worry about his trip in the morning, he closed his eyes as he was lulled to sleep by her breathing. Alone Sakura times? Naruto awoke to the sound of his alarm clock going off and for someone to be banging on his door. Moving the infinite lowly off his chest, he walked over to the door with a pair of black jeans on before opening it to find Rias's peerage bar Rias and Issei, along with his bishop, Revel, standing at the door. Looking at them with a raised brow, he moved away from the door as he walked back into his apartment. What are you all doing here? He asked with a yawn as he grabbed a shirt and placed it on with a black zip-up jacket on top of it. Well, we came to see how you were doing, Akino said as she saw Naruto grab a full duffel bag. What's that for? She asked, confused as Ophis walked down. He has a trip. So he's just packing the rest of his stuff away, she said before walking over to Naruto before she pulled his shirt away from his neck. Once she did that, she leaned closer to him before everyone watched as she bit into his neck roughly. They watched as blood flowed down his neck lightly as she moaned slightly. She pulled her head away and everyone watched as a tattoo appeared around his neck similar to that of a collar. It was two snakes intertwining as they shifted around his neck until they eventually stopped at the front of his throat before they circled around the hole at the base of his neck and bit into the neck of the other snake. What is this exactly? He asked as he stared at it in confusion before grabbing a tan raincoat and placing it on before giving an umbrella to Revel. A mark that symbolizes that you belong to me, Ophis said as Naruto looked at her while everyone else was shocked. Wait, so you basically made it so that Naruto is your mate? Revel asked, shocked. Correct. He is mine. I will share him, but I will be his first, and nothing will stop me, she said as she glared towards Akino, who returned at full force. All of you can come see me off, but you're not coming along. This is a mission for Revel and I. Are you ready? He said to them before turning his attention to his bishop. Yes, I am Naruto-kun. Shall we go? She asked before he opened a garganta. Let's, was all he said as Revel jumped into the Garganta with Naruto and the others following. Once they exited it, they found them on the docks on the edge of Kuro. They all saw what looked like a huge boat that was meant for an entire party group instead of 2 people. They also saw Ajuka standing next to it as he lit a cigar while Grafia stood next to him. Everyone watched as Naruto walked over to them and bowed. Walking over and doing the same, they saw Ajuka pull out a little black notebook with a pen and give it to Naruto. What I want you to do, Naruto, is research. There is a special breed of demons called Rias. Apparently there is only one left on the islands. The way to find her is to look out for a demonic left arm that she has. He explained as Naruto took the notebook and looked at him confused. Her? He asked. Yes, her. Don't worry about it, you'll be fine, especially with your abilities. Now once you reach the Isles of Berseria A/N, sorry I spelt it wrong last chapter. But thanks to someone I got the proper way to spell it. You will meet a girl waiting for you at the docks. Her name is Crow. That's all she gave us. You need to find out the rest yourself. Good luck, Naruto, Ajuka said before he disappeared. Looking towards his king, Naruto saw her hand him a bag with what he thought to be clothing. Looking inside, he found his assumption to be correct as a black suit was inside it. You represent me as my queen. While I do not care where I stand in the underworld, I will not have my name tarnished. Understand? Grafia asked with a glare, getting a smile from Naruto. I understand, my king, he said, bowing to her. Good. See you when you get back, was all he heard as she vanished. Straightening up, he nodded to everyone as he and Revel boarded the ship. Everyone watched as Naruto turned to them and offered a small wave before the boat started up and left. Naruto saw as Ophis walked into a portal she made as he felt the marking around his neck flare up. Sighing to himself, he watched as everyone left before he turned and walked towards a bathroom that was on the boat as Revel sat on a bench watching as the water flowed past her. She watched as dolphins swam next to the boat and jumped into the air. Hearing footsteps behind her, she turned to see Naruto walk over to her dressed in his new clothes from Grafia. He was wearing a black button-up suit with orange studs on the wrists, with matching black dress pants as well as chocolate-brown dress shoes. He had a black-white undershirt under the suit jacket that had the collar neatly folded over with a black tie. This hid his hole in the marking from Ophis completely, and gave him a more sophisticated look. On his hands were a pair of white gloves that covered his entire hand and went to his wrists. Basically, he's dressed like Sebastian from Kuroshitsuji. Revel felt a blush occur on her face due to how Naruto looked. He sat down next to her and simply crossed his arms and closed his eyes. You better rest. Who knows how long till we reach the Isles? They heard the captain said. With those words in mind, Revel came closer to Naruto before she closed her eyes and leaned onto his shoulder. Naruto looked at her before he wrapped an arm around her shoulders. This brought her closer to him as he closed his eyes, deciding to take the captain's words to heart. 1 hour later. Naruto had his head back and was jerked awake as they hit a particularly rough wave. Opening his eyes, he found Revel had moved from his shoulder and was now resting her head on his lap while he was running a hand through her hair. Shaking her awake, Naruto watched as she sat up and stretched out, causing some cracks to sound. She turned towards him with a smile as she picked up a small handbag as they noticed they had finally come to a stop. Naruto looked over the side and saw a woman sitting down on a chair. Grabbing his duffel bag and opening a garganta, he placed it inside before closing it completely. He walked down to the bottom of the ship with Revel following him. Once they got off the boat, they looked towards the woman as she stood up and looked up at them with bored golden eyes. Her bored look was returned by Naruto's own as Revel stared between them with her head tilted. It's like looking at a female version of him, she thought. And she was right. The woman in question, with how she gave an impassive and bored gaze, looked like a female version of Naruto, just with golden eyes and natural black hair. Her midnight black hair fell to her knees and the end was tied together by a gray hair tie. She was wearing a torn red vest that covered her chest and left her stomach open to the world. She had on what was possible remains on black jeans. They were torn, leaving her legs open, though her more important parts were now hidden by her now shorts. She had multiple belts on her body. One was wrapped around her waist while she had another 3 around her right thigh. She had armor plating on her right leg going from her foot to her knee while it only covered her foot on the other leg. She also had matching armor on her right arm that went from her forearm to her elbow. However, something that caught both of their attention more than anything was the fact her entire left arm was covered in bandages. However, they never thought of it and left it alone. She also had a ruined black cape that was tied around her collarbone. While looking at her, Naruto had to admit she was quite beautiful. She also saw the woman's golden eyes boring in Naruto's own with no emotion that she could see. She watched as Naruto raised his hand towards the woman. Naruto Uzumaki. was all that he said. Velvet. Velvet Crow. Was what he got in return. It's nice to meet you, Miss Crow. This is Ravel Phoenix, he said, bringing her attention to Ravel, who bowed. It's nice to meet both of you. Come, I will show you to where you will be staying, she said, walking off with the two following her. While following Velvet, they were given a small tour of her home. She showed them where all the main shops to buy groceries were. Throughout the tour, Naruto and Ravel kept quiet and simply took in the scenery. That was until a little girl came running up to them and bumped into Naruto. She hit the ground while Naruto stayed as still as a statue. Him and Ravel looked down to see a little girl wearing gray rags that were 2 sizes too big for her as clothes. Her black hair looked dirty while her eyes held a look that Naruto knew all too well. A look of someone who has given up. Someone who had the same eyes he did as a child. The eyes of someone who has given into despair. Looking up, he saw a small group of 4 grown men coming towards them with sticks in their hands. Velvet glared at the people until she saw Naruto move in front of her and hold the girl to the back of his leg. Who are all of you people? Why was this girl running from you? He asked, a slight undertone of anger within his voice. None of your business, outsider. One roared as the little girl grabbed his pant leg tightly. Naruto looked down at the girl and saw that she had small scratches on her arms. Seeing those injuries on a small girl who was only about 6 years old brought the anger Naruto held within him to the surface as he glared at the men. It's my business now. This girl is under my protection now, and to see injuries like that to someone her age is a quick way to piss me off. And let me tell you this, me getting angry is not something that happens often. Naruto spoke to them as he turned to the little girl. Were these the ones that did all this to you? He asked, hiding his anger as to not scare her. The girl didn't trust her voice, nor did she trust Naruto, so all she did was give a slight nod. Ravel watched as Naruto's eyes, which showed that he felt sorry for the girl, became covered in anger completely. She moved over and brought the girl away while holding onto her to make sure she didn't run away. Don't worry, I haven't known Naruto-san for long, but I know one thing. He's gonna teach those bullies a lesson for picking on you, she said calmly as Velvet overheard it and looked towards Naruto. She's just an orphan girl that you have never met, and yet you want to protect her after just meeting her. Naruto Uzumaki, huh? Interesting, she thought to herself as Naruto walked up to the man leading the group. His hair overshadowed his eyes, before he looked up, showing his true anger. They watched as he kicked the leg out from under the leader while grabbing his arm before attacking his ribs as the grip on the leader's weapon lessened to the point where Naruto tore it from his grip and then spun around before slamming the front of the stick into his face. Turning to the other men, he dropped the stick before disappearing. They were looking for him, only for Naruto to deliver a strong kick to one of their heads. The last two turned only for Naruto to grab both of them by the head and slam their heads together. Looking around, Naruto saw the small group of 4 men lying down groaning as they held various parts of their own body. Placing his hands in his pockets, he went to move back to Ravel's side only to turn and kick one of the men who were starting to stand back up in the side of the face, sending him back down hard. He watched as the others went to stand but instead stayed on the ground as they felt a dark presence come over them. They all turned their attention to Velvet, who was covered in a dark aura as heat waves flowed off her left arm. Naruto's eyes narrowed before he saw her looking towards the men lying on the ground as she stalked over to them. Naruto walked past her as she stopped in front of them and stepped on the head of the closer man as she stared at all of them with a glare. He looked at the young girl and saw her staring at Velvet with a smile. Meanwhile, the group of men were cowering in fear as a blade shot out from then gauntlet armor on her right arm as she faced it towards. Naruto, deciding that these men weren't worth the energy for her, stopped Velvet before turning towards the group. Don't waste your time on these guys. They're not worth it, he said simply as the men all flinched in fear. Besides, after today's beating, I don't think that they would try anything should they see me nearby. If they did, then I would show them true power, was what he finished saying as Velvet moved away from them and to the girl. She saw as the girl smiled happily as Naruto stood in front of them protectively while the girl grabbed Ravel's hand and started dragging her off towards a nearby park. Velvet looked on with a soft smile as the girl seemed to see Ravel, even after just meeting her, as what she guessed to be a big sister. Naruto walked over and stopped next to her and watched as the girl dragged his bishop away. Looking over to Velvet, he saw the smile on her face. Shrugging his shoulders, he bumped her before walking after the young girl and his bishop. Velvet walked faster so that she could walk side by side with Naruto and talk with him. Tell me, Naruto-san, why did you decide to do what you did back there? She asked as she turned her attention. It was her eyes. When I saw the dead look in her eyes, I was reminded of myself at her age. Tell me a bit about that girl, he said as his hands were back within his suit's pockets. Her name is Miyuki. No known last name. She just appeared on the orphanage doorstep one night while it was raining. I was making my rounds to make sure all the little ones were asleep until I heard someone knock at the door. Opening it, I looked around to find no one there. Assuming it to be a joke, I went to shut the door until I heard a noise. I looked down, and there she was sitting at the door. She had a note with her, but all it said was to find someone to help raise her. She didn't know who gave her the note, or how she got to the orphanage. Both of us didn't know what the note meant, so I brought her in, and have basically raised her, as though she was my own. To replace the loss of my little brother. She explained before becoming depressed at the end. You lost your little brother? Naruto asked, feeling sad for her. Oh, I said that out loud, didn't I? She asked, slightly embarrassed before her face became upset. But yes, I lost my little brother a few years before I found Miyuki. I still miss him. She finished, bringing a hand to her chest. It's hard to get over the loss of someone dear to you. From what I've heard, it leaves a hole that could never be replaced. I myself was raised in an orphanage just like Miyuki. My parents had both died. My mother due to complications at birth, while my father placed me in the orphanage a little bit after I was born. Then, thanks to a close friend of mine, I found out he died due to a heart virus a little after I was born. I was picked on for my birthmark and ostracized for it by most of the adults. Though like how Miyuki has you, I had someone who was there for me. Her name was Nono Yakushi. She was a nun at my church who found me laying on my bed covered in scratches as the others had bullied me. She patched me up, and then we just started bonding. Before I knew it, I was always around her and kept to myself unless she asked me to. He told her his story. So you know how she feels. To be raised in an orphanage from day one. To not know about your family. She responded. Correct. When I saw her eyes, I was reminded of myself before I met Nono. I didn't want someone as young as her to be treated the way those men were treating her. He told her with conviction. Just meeting someone and already caring about her. You're a strange one, Naruto. She said as they stopped at the park to find Miyuki on a swing next to Revel. Miyuki saw both of them and waved them over with a smile firmly planted on her face. Naruto and Velvet walked over to them before Miyuki got off the swing and stood in front of Naruto. Naruto watched as she shyly looked up at him, with what Naruto could see as sapphire blue eyes that matched his own right eye. She locked eyes with him as Naruto stared on before he closed his eyes with a small smile before he felt someone hug his right leg. Looking down, he found Miyuki had latched onto his leg tightly. She looked up with her blue eyes shining brightly as a large smile came across her face. Thank you for helping me, mister, she said, shocking Naruto. No prob, little one, he said, ruffling her hair. She grabbed his hand before dragging him towards the swings. Naruto looked at Velvet for help. He saw her give him a shrug. Naruto sighed at this before he joined in, by pushing Miyuki on the swings, so that Miyuki could be happier and show off her natural smile. One that actually made Naruto's lips turn from their normal thin line into a small smile. Noticing this himself, and deciding to pay her back a bit, Naruto pet the girl on the head as her injuries started to heal quickly. Miyuki looked over herself in shock as she turned to Naruto, who smiled at her before pushing her over to the swing with Velvet occupying a nearby bench, and watched as Naruto played with the little girl as though she was truly his own child. They spent the entire day together, with Naruto acting like a father spending time with his daughter. Unfortunately, it was time for Miyuki to return home and for Naruto and Revel to be taken to their hotel. Naruto was walking behind Velvet as Miyuki was on his back asleep. The small group stopped at the orphanage before Naruto walked in after Velvet, who was holding the door for him. He walked to her room after Velvet told him where it was. Placing her in her bed and tucking her in tightly, Naruto placed a small kiss on her forehead before walking out of her room with a smile on his face. Walking to the door, he found Velvet standing there with a smile. You're good at acting, you know that, she said as he walked past her. Never had to look after kids. I never interacted with the younger ones when I was still in the orphanage. I guess I was just doing what was natural, Naruto admitted with a smile. You seem to have opened up more. When we first met, you didn't show any emotion. No smiles. In fact, it's almost like you never had emotions to begin with, she said as a thoughtful look appeared on his face. I guess Miyuki-chan's happiness and how she acted towards me today broke down the walls I put around myself. The innocent smile on her face, I just couldn't help but give one to match, you know, he told her as he placed his hands in his pockets as Revel stood up from her sitting position on the steps. Well, I have to say it really is an improvement considering when we first came here and you two met each other, Revel said, pointing at them. It was like looking at a wacky mirror. You two were just like each other. Though the smiles you both have look really nice on you. You should smile more. Velvet-san and you, Naruto-sama, should just place Rias at the furthest part of your head and forget about her. You'll have more people to help you now that you're a king, she added as she looked away from the two. After all, I'm your first piece, so I will be the closest one to you. She finished, a cocky smile on her face. You're a king? Velvet asked, shocked, ignoring how Ravel deflated at being ignored. That I am. I also serve as a queen for someone else while maintaining my own peerage. I have help, of course, Naruto told her while pointing at Ravel, who puffed her chest out proudly. Is she your only piece? Velvet asked, seeing as Naruto never referenced if he had more than one. Yes, she is. And as you can see, she takes a lot of pride in that fact, Naruto said as a blush came across Ravel's face, not that the two people behind her could see that. Now I'll answer more questions on the way to our temporary home. Would you kindly show us the way? He told her before asking her politely to lead them home. Velvet gave a nod before she walked in front of the two devils, with them following closely behind her. On the way, Naruto's attention was drawn to Velvet's bandaged arm. He remembered what Ajuka had told him before he left for the Isles. To find the Dion, look for her demonic arm. Narrowing his eyes as his attention was still on her arm, Naruto noticed that they had arrived. It was a small wooden house. Sending Ravel inside after she grabbed the key from Velvet, he opened a garganta so that Ravel could grab any gear that Naruto had placed within it. Once that was done, he closed it before Ravel went to explore their current housing situation. Velvet. I have something I need to ask of you, Naruto told her as he donned his expressionless mask. What is it? She asked. Do you know the identity of a being called the Dion? The devil Ajuka Beelzebub asked me to find out about her, he explained as he noticed her bandaged arm's hand ball into a fist. I'm afraid I don't know, she lied as Naruto let out a sigh. Velvet, it's you, isn't it? He asked with a nagging feeling. You already know that I'm a devil, raised in an orphanage run by a church. Tell me about your past and I will help you, he told her as he moved closer to her. Yes. The reason I am the way I am is because I didn't want to lose my little brother, she admitted as she undid the bandages showing her arm. A giant black and red clawed hand was what met Naruto's eyes. On the fingers sat claws that looked as though it could easily rend flesh into nothing within an instant. Naruto's left eye recorded the look and the possible deadliness of the arm as he heard her speak again. You told me about yourself. Now let me tell you how I became what I am, she said before walking off with Naruto following. Once they had stopped, he noticed her sitting on a bench, overlooking a beach as the water crashed violently against the rocks, staring at her demonic left arm with anger. Sitting down next to her, Naruto placed his attention on her completely as she let out a sigh. Naruto. Even though we just met, you interest me. You seem dead to the world, yet after today, you've shown that you can actually show emotions. Why do you hide them? She asked. Naruto knew she was simply buying time, but deciding to humor the girl, he answered her question. I was originally a knight to a different king. She brought me back when I was near death. After she did, I started to develop feelings for her. I thought I loved her. But in truth, I don't know how I felt about her. I don't truly know what love for another person is. At least romantically. I have felt the love of a mother, but that's it. So when it came time where someone wanted to force her into marrying them, she decided that she would have to give her virginity to a pervert she reincarnated as well. I was upset at first, wondering why I wasn't in his place. But now I just don't care. All I want is to protect those precious to me, and make sure that they can never be hurt. No matter the cost, he admitted as Murcielago appeared in his hand. It's with this blade, my sacred gear Despair's onslaught Murcielago, that I will protect everything close to me. He finished with a determined smile before turning towards Velvet, who was staring at her hand. The reason I am a Dryon, a rare demon, is because of my family. My sister Celica Crow married an exorcist by the name of Artorias, she said, noting that Naruto flinched at the title exorcist. It was a scarlet night, where a blood moon fills the sky with a bloody glow. She started. Flashback and backstory time. From here on, past Velvet will have quotation marks, while current Velvet will have thought marks. A younger Velvet was wandering around her small hometown of Abel. She was walking around with a smile looking for her little brother. She was wearing a long-sleeved brown collared shirt that had the sleeves rolled up to her biceps. She was wearing gray jeans as well, while having a pair of brown boots as well. Her gauntlet blade was still set on her right arm. I was 15 when it happened. A happy teenager, loving her life. Velvet spoke as Naruto's attention was captured. My little brother, Laphicet, or Laffy as I called him, was missing and I was trying to find him. I eventually found him in a forest. He was walking to the cape, she finished. The younger Velvet was wandering in a forest until she found a young boy with dirty blonde hair wearing a small gray cloak with matching shirt and pants. He smiled at her as they both continued on a walk. But they had to stop as they were suddenly attacked by a monster. Laffy, I want you to get away now. I will protect you, she said as a blade came out of her gauntlet. The demon, which stood at about the same height as the younger Velvet, looked oddly like a bipedal wolf with gray fur and farmer's clothes on. Its claws glinted in the light of the sun as it growled at her. It rushed her, ready to tear her head off, only for her to roll under it and swipe at its legs, cutting the thighs. She jumped over the wolf before stabbing it in the shoulder. She tried to remove her blade quickly, only to have the wolf grab her arm and slam her into the ground and throw her away like nothing as she slammed into a tree. She sat up as her little brother moved in front of her to protect her. "Laffy? What are you still doing here?" Velvet screamed in shock. "I am still here because I want to protect you, Oni-chan," he said as the wolf charged both of them. Velvet threw herself in front of Laphicet to take the full brunt of the attack. The last thing Velvet felt was pain as she was slammed into full force by the wolf. She and Laphicet were sent to the ground. Pain was all Velvet felt as she blacked out. Laphicet's face was the last thing she saw. Small time skip. She woke up within her bed with a startled gasp. Looking around and finding herself in her room, she felt something sitting within her hand. Looking down, she found her little brother's comb sitting in her palm's grasp. Looking outside and seeing that the town was dyed a scarlet red by the glow of the moon, she got out of bed before heading outside and moving towards the shrine at the edge of town. On her way, she had a bad feeling as she couldn't find Laphicet anywhere. All she had was a small note in her pocket written by Laphicet. The note told her that he was with their brother-in-law Artorias at the shrine. When she arrived at the shrine, she found Artorias and Laphicet standing at the edge. Artorias will be referred to as Arthur whenever Velvet is around. But if she is with others, then he will be Artorias. "Laffy, Arthur," she called out to them as they both turned to her. "Yet another sin I have to lay to rest," Arthur said as Velvet's hands and ankles were pinned to the ground as fire appeared on them. The fire didn't burn her but simply hold her in place. "What are you doing, Arthur?" she asked. "This place is where a seal that protected this world is. Laphicet here will be sacrificed in order to ensure we are able to protect everyone," Arthur said as Laphicet was enveloped within a golden glow. "What? You're gonna sacrifice Laffy? Are you insane?" Velvet screamed as she glared at Arthur. "Laphicet decided to sacrifice himself once he found out what I had planned. For what it's worth. At least this way you will be protected," he told her as Laphicet floated above a dark abyss before the golden glow moved outside and formed a golden pentagram around him. Though to Velvet's shock and horror, a golden cross appeared in Laphicet's chest. She saw his face opened in pain before the cross disappeared as he started falling. She pulled her limbs away from her binds and shattered them completely. Moving quickly, she ran towards the edge of the abyss before grabbing Laphicet's hand as she almost fell in but grabbed the ledge. Arthur moved up to the edge as he drew his blade in one hand as he stared at Velvet, who glared at him in anger. "Yet again. You're a slave to your emotions. Goodbye, Velvet," he said as he slashed her arm off. Velvet watched in shock as her arm flew in front of her face as her own blood was splattered on her face before she fell into the deep dark abyss with Laphicet just ahead of her. Flashback end. I came out of that dark abyss, with my arm being how it is. As it stands now, I'm a demon who lives by killing other demons and devouring them, she admitted as her arm was wrapped in bandages once more. Ever since then, I've worked in the orphanage, and then I met Miyuki, and then raised her as though she was my own. She finished as tears had formed in her eyes. Velvet. You're a strong woman to be the way you are after what you went through. You are still sane and have a good heart. Naruto told her, only to have her claws dig into his right arm as the bandages disappeared again. No, I'm not a strong woman. In my rage and despair, I slaughtered everyone I could find. Entire villages, men, women, and children weren't spared. I devoured them all without hesitation. I'm nothing but a monster, she told him as her claws dug deeper into his arm. And yet here you are, protecting a young girl who had nothing in this world as though she was your own child. Velvet, even with your past, you're still a strong woman. You can't let yourself be defined by the mistakes. Learn from them, use the mistakes to become stronger. You've already started with Miyuki, now you just have to move on, he told her, placing his other hand on top of her demonic one. Naruto, I was called the Lord of Calamity. I've killed hundreds without a care in the world. I'm a monster, she said, pulling her arm away from his. Velvet, the Lord of Calamity. It's a wonderful name. Velvet. I think we should get some sleep. This is a vacation and I really want to see what this place has to offer, he said, standing up and offering Velvet a hand. Come on. Let's go, he said as Velvet looked at him. She saw a kind smile on his face as her line of sight shifted from his face to the outstretched limb in front of her. Bringing her clawed hand up and placing it within Naruto's outstretched hand, she felt his hand tighten before he pulled her up. She looked towards him with a shocked expression as a silhouette of her little brother Laphicet appeared next to him along with a woman around her 20s. The woman had the same golden-colored eyes as her, with matching black hair. She had a kind smile as she wore a form-fitting black dress with a white apron over it. Celica, Laffy, she thought to herself as she saw them place their hands on top of her own with a smile. Live along a purpose-filled life, my dear little sister, she heard her sister say before she faded. Be happy with your life, sis. I want to see you happy and smiling like you always were, Laffy told her before he himself disappeared. Come, Velvet. Let's get you home so that you can rest, he said as he started walking with her to her home. Celica, Laffy. Thank you? And Naruto, why would you try so hard to help some random monster? She thought to herself looking down. Unknown to her, Naruto was staring at her with a saddened gaze mixed with confusion. Why is she like this? Why am I wanting to help her? He thought to himself. It's because that's the kind of person you are. He heard the voice of his sacred gears speak within his head. The kind of person I am? Naruto asked Murcielago. Your entire life, bar your moments with the blue-haired girl and Nono Yakushi, and with the queen and rook of your former peerage, you've hidden behind a mask of indifference. Even now you still have it, but that little girl, Miyuki, she is bringing out the true you. Seeing how Velvet is, you want to see her smiling. You want to see her happy. You will do anything to make sure those around you are happy, Murcielago told the boy. I want to see her happy? He questioned as he stared at Velvet. Yes. The true you, Naruto, is a selfless person who would give anything to make those around him happy. I think your time here will do good for you. You can show your true self, Murcielago told him. To see her happy. He thought to himself again before a smile came over his face. I agree, Murcielago, this place will bring out the true me. Thank you for bringing this to light, Murcielago. He thought to his partner. No problem. I will always lend my power to you. I will protect what you want to protect. After all, we are partners, Murcielago told him. Once he was done conversing with his spirit, he noticed that him and Velvet were standing outside a small house that was near the orphanage. Never want to move far from work, huh? He joked in reference to her living close to the orphanage. And here I thought you lived in the orphanage to be closer to Miyuki, he said as a small smile appeared on her face. No, I just go there and spend time with the children every now and then. And in regards to Miyuki, I plan on having her taken out of the orphanage and placed into my custody soon, she told him as she opened her door. She noticed that her hand was still showing and was still being held by Naruto's own. She looked at him as he noticed as let go of her hand before placing it within his pockets. So you're adopting her? Naruto asked her as he stood at her doorway. Yep. I'm just making sure that I have everything ready for her. I just want Miyuki to live a proper life, she told him as her arm was covered in bandages once again. I can tell you'll be a wonderful mother, Velvet, he said before turning around and starting to leave. And also, Velvet, as long as I'm around, I will help you. Whether it be by helping you overcome your past, or simply being there, I will help you. He spoke seriously as he turned to her and showed a bright smile. After all you've been through, you deserve happiness, he said before he walked off back to his temporary home. See you tomorrow, Velvet, he said before he disappeared completely as Velvet shut the door. Naruto. Thank you, she said to herself, grateful that someone wanted to help her, even if they just met. With Naruto at his house. He had just arrived home and opened the door and walked inside to see Ravel sitting in front of a fireplace within the living room drinking a hot chocolate from a cup she found. Walking into the living room, he took his clothes off of his upper body, leaving him in a black and red singlet. He sat down on a chair that was next to Ravel as his peerage set came out in a flash of energy. Placing it down on a coffee table that was in front of him, he looked at the set that was sitting in front of him. 8 pawns, 1 mutated bishop, 2 knights, a normal rook and a mutated rook, and his only queen piece was left. Looking at all of his remaining pieces, his eyes focused onto the queen piece that was next to his mutated bishop. Ravel noticed his gaze before her attention was shifted to her king himself. Have you found someone to take another piece? She asked, expecting the obvious. Yes. And with the power I felt firsthand, I think she would make a wonderful queen, he said, pulling his sleeve up to show the 5 holes in his arm from Velvet's claws. One thing that interests me is that she has slowed down my regeneration, he told her as the holes in his arms were closing only at a snail's pace. She was able to do that? How? Ravel asked, shocked. I think it's due to the fact she can eat other demons. While we are devils, I think we can fall under that category. Or it's because we are demons that she can't fully devour us. But she can still eat some and take power from what she did. When her claws were within my arm, I felt some of my own energy being drained. I didn't pay mind to it, but now I'm interested. He explained as a smile etched its way onto his face. Now all we have to do is get her to join. I won't force her. If she joins, it'll be by her choice. He finished standing up. Also, Ravel. What do you think of living here? Naruto asked as he looked outside. Living here? She repeated. Yes. It's a big change compared to where you live now. But at least if we stay here, we can have peace. No worries about stray devils. No interaction with heaven. A place where all our problems are far from reaching us. He explained as he turned his gaze to her. It truly is a wonderful place. But are you sure you want to stay here because of the stray devils and heaven? She asked. Or is it because of Rias? She asked again. In truth, I have stopped caring about Rias. What I said was completely true. The only problem is that she would keep bothering me until I explain why I did what I did. And I can't deal with that. He told her. Why did you? I want to know as your bishop. No secrets, all right? She asked. Right. You're my precious bishop. The reason I did what I did was because I couldn't stand to always be reminded of how I caught Rias and Issei. I was actually getting ready to tell her that I had feelings for her, then I found her trying to give herself to Issei to break the contract. After spending time with Ofusheim in the dimensional gap, I learned that I had nothing but a crush. I learned that as she gave me what she thought was her love. I accepted it, and basically we've been a couple since. Kinda why she gave this marking. He said as he rubbed the marking around his neck. Right, she said it marks you as her mate. She said, remembering what the infinite loli said before she glared at Akino. Yep. He said simply. Anyway, it's time we get some sleep. Velvet is taking us out on a proper trip and show us around the town. He said as he walked towards the bedrooms. I've been meaning to ask. What is the name of this town? She asked as she stood to follow him. Abel. Was all he said before he went into his room. Ravel smiled as she walked into her room with a smile. Naruto-sama, I feel that you will unleash your true power in a bid to do what you must. She thought as she sat on her bed. Good luck. Was all she thought before she let sleep envelop her. Time skipped to the next morning. Naruto woke up to something he hasn't experienced in ages. Peace. No sound bar the playful tweeting of the birds. No alarm clock blaring in his ears as it rudely wakes him. Sighing to himself, he pulled himself out of bed and walked down to the kitchen. He entered the kitchen and opened the cupboards before he grabbed 2 cups. Placing them on the bench, he pulled out a bag of powdered chocolate before he started to make some hot chocolate for his bishop and himself. Once he was done, he grabbed the hot chocolate he made for Ravel and placed it aside before moving on to making blueberry pancakes. After he finished those, he heard a knock at the door. Walking over to it, he opened the door and was met with both Velvet and Miyuki standing there. Good morning, Velvet-san. And a wonderful good morning to you as well, Miyuki-chan. He said to them both before ruffling the little girl's hair. Do you want to come inside? I just finished preparing breakfast for Ravel and myself. I wouldn't mind making some for you too. He asked as he stepped aside as Miyuki moved inside, leaving the 2 teenagers standing at the door. Energetic, isn't she? He asked, laughing slightly as the girl disappeared into the kitchen. She truly is. Are you sure it's okay if we come in? I already made food for Miyuki and myself. Velvet said as she looked sheepish as they both stepped inside. Once Naruto shut the door and turned to Velvet, he saw her wearing a pair of black jeans with a brown vest covering her upper torso. Her left arm still had the bandages on them while her right had her gauntlet on it. She was also wearing a pair of black boots. Naruto had to admit that this made Velvet look like a normal teenager. And not a demon who's had a tough life. Her villager outfit. Velvet turned to him and noticed that his chest was proudly on display as he wasn't wearing a shirt. She saw the tattoo being displayed proudly on his chest along with the hole on his neck. All he had on was a pair of black jeans with slippers on. And on the very top of his head was a nightcap he wears. She looked towards the kitchen as she heard a noise. Both of them moved towards the kitchen as they saw Miyuki sitting at the table. They both sighed as Naruto ushered Velvet to the table as he grabbed some plates and dished them out some pancakes. Placing the plates next in front of both of the girls, he grabbed a plate and walked upstairs before opening Ravel's door and placing the plate on the nightstand next to her bed. Placing his hand on her shoulder and shaking her awake, he smiled as she looked towards him with a tired smile. Morning, she said with a tired yawn. Morning, Ravel-chan. I made you breakfast and a drink, he said, placing a tray on her lap as she sat up. Ravel looked at the tray and took a sip of the hot chocolate while letting out a happy sigh. You seriously made this? She asked as she started to eat the pancakes. Yep. Now hurry up, we have visitors downstairs. Velvet-san and little Miyuki-chan are waiting for us, he said before walking out. Walking back to his visitors, he found Velvet cleaning up her and Miyuki's plates while Miyuki sat down at the table. Moving towards Velvet and the cup of hot chocolate he made for himself, he placed the cup in front of Miyuki before moving over to help Velvet out. You two seem to be right at home, he said as he dried the dishes while Velvet was cleaning them. Most of the homes here in Able are the same in structure. Miyuki-chan spends so much time at my house that she knows it like the back of her hand, she told him as they finished. Interesting, so what's the plan for today? He asked the teen standing next to him. Well, we are gonna go for a walk around the town and then head down to the Cape to pick some flowers. Then we will have a picnic at a wonderful little spot I know that gives a beautiful view of the beach. She listed off the plans as Naruto smiled. I'll let Ravel know once she's done, he said as Ravel walked down. Speak of the devil, he said as he informed Ravel of their plans. Ophis had just woken up from yet another long sleep she had. Looking around, she remembered that Naruto was out of the country trying to form his own peerage. Looking to her right and seeing that the bed had a large lump in it, an annoyed look came onto her face, something that was rare for her, as she never showed emotions unless Naruto was with her. Pulling the blanket, she saw the naked body of Akino laying there, as she held onto something tightly. Placing a hand on the girl's shoulder, Ophis gave her a light push that sent her off the bed and onto the ground. Akino screamed as she fell to the ground, making Ophis let out a small smile at her work, before she shot up to her feet and glared at said former infinite loli. What was that for? She asked, angry. You were in my bed, I don't remember letting you in. And only Naruto can sleep next to me, Ophis told her as she crawled towards Akino and stopped at the end of the bed. Looking down, Ophis saw something that irked her. Laying on the ground was a dakimakura that looked hand-stitched. On it was her blonde interest in a pose that most women would consider amazing as his slightly wet hair stuck to his face, his impassive gaze locked upwards. His clothes messy and slightly see-through as well. His pants being pulled down slightly on one side. Looking back up to the teen, she stared boredly into her eyes and asked, What is this exactly? It's the dakimakura of the person I love. It helps me sleep, Akino asked plainly as she stared at Ophis with annoyance. Okay, but why is Naruto on it? Ophis asked, feeling annoyed. Oh, because I couldn't take it. For as long as I known him, he never turned his eyes to me in any sort of romantic light. I made this as a little taste of what I will have in the future, Akino said with emphasis on the word will. Oh, you really believe that you can make him fall for you? Ophis asked, smiling. Of course. I've known Naruto since he first became a devil. I always tried my best to look after him, and I am going to be the one who shows him what true love between two lovers is, Akino declared with a determined smile as Ophis stared on. Not if I get to him first, little girl, Ophis thought to herself before she remembered something. Girl, how is your peerage faring with the sudden loss of him? Ophis asked. Not too good. Ever since he left, we've been divided, Akino said, looking to the ground and picking up her dakimakura and holding it closely. That I could tell easily. But how badly? Ophis asked again. Well, whenever Rias says something or tries to order me to tell her about Naruto, I just tell her that it's something that's no longer her problem. She had her chance, but she blew it all on the idiot. Speaking of which, even after the fight, he thinks Naruto left due to him not wanting to be in, as Issei puts it. Amazing percents, she said using air quotes. And what about the other three? Ophis asked. Kaneko worries me a little. She can't stand Rias and Issei and goes out of her way to ignore them whenever they ask her for something. Though I have a feeling if the idiot badmouths Naruto again, Kaneko is gonna break what makes him a man. And with Kiba, he's following in Kaneko's footsteps and ignoring them, making them feel what Naruto felt. And Asia, she's still her usual self and is trying to make some peace with them, Akino explained as she let out a loud sigh. So Red is angry at the fact she lost Naruto. And it's messing with all of you as well, Ophis simplified as she moved to sit next to the girl. Pretty much, and to be honest, not having him around is affecting me as well, she said sadly as Ophis looked confused. What do you mean? Ophis asked. Well, back before everything happened, I was the closest to Naruto. I stayed with him more times than I could count. Without him around, it's like I can't fully wake up, Akino complained. Kinda like a rechargeable battery, Ophis said as Akino smiled. Exactly. That's why I have the Dakimakura, but it's just not the same, she said sadly. It may take a month or two, but Naruto will return. He is just gathering his own peerage. People who he can protect from falling into despair. Office explained, making Akino smile. You really believe in him? Akino stated with a smile. Of course. When has Naruto ever let us down? Office said as Akino suddenly had an idea. Are you able to view Naruto without traveling anywhere? Akino asked. Yes. It's quite easy for me. Office replied to the team. Could you show me how he is? I want to see how he's doing. Akino explained as Office could see how the girl felt about the blonde. Nodding to the girl, Office raised her hand in front of her. Both of them watched in silence as a small ripple appeared before it showed Naruto walking around the town of Abel. His clothing was something that Akino never expected to see the usually stoic and emotionless boy to wear. He had a white singlet with a red spiral over his heart. On top of that was an orange jacket that stopped at the bottom of his ribs. On the sleeves of the jacket was the same spiral in the same color. He had on a pair of gray baggy track pants with blue boots to top off the getup. Future Trunks clothing, Android Saga. Recolored, they saw him leading a small girl around as a small smile was etched onto his face. Akino, knowing the smile as one Naruto's true smile, could do nothing but give her own. He looks happy, she stated as Office turned to her. Closing the ripple, Office turned to the girl as she stood to her feet and moved to get dressed. What's your name, girl? She asked. Akino Himejima. Akino replied as she turned to Office. And you're the dragon god of infinity, Office. That's correct. Now Akino, how about we talk about something? Office suggested as Akino raised a brow. And what would that be? Akino asked as a smile appeared on Office's face. A little agreement for our favorite blonde, was all she said before she had Akino's full attention. I'm in. She agreed instantly. Good. Office said simply. Gremory Estate. Grafia was currently walking around the estate making sure she had cleaned all the rooms and done all of her jobs for the day. Once she was finished, she decided to pay Surzex a visit. Teleporting to where her king would be, she found him behind his desk filling out some papers. She stood there for a few minutes before Surzex lifted his head away from his work and noticed her. Grafia-chan, how is my queen doing? He asked happily as a smile came onto the woman's face. I am doing well. So far I haven't heard anything in regards to how Naruto is doing in Berseria. So I can only imagine he's doing perfectly fine, she replied. That's good. And anything in regards to her? He asked as Grafia's smile disappeared. She contacted me 2 days after he left, she said as Surzex let out a sigh. And? He asked again. Grafia sighed before she went on to explain as to how Rias had been upset at the fact she was tricked. Flashback. Grafia had just finished her daily duties before she felt a familiar energy signature appear behind her. Knowing what it was about, she dusted off her clothes before she turned around and saw a very angry and upset Rias standing there. Good afternoon, Rias-sama, she said, offering the young heiress a small bow. How dare you? Rias asked as Grafia stared at her in confusion. How dare I? Grafia asked confused as Rias walked towards her. You took him away from me. He had saved me from my nightmare. And you came and took him away, she said as Grafia could only sigh. Rias-sama, I did nothing of the sort. If I hadn't made you sign the trade agreement, then Naruto would have most likely left, as he didn't want to have to deal with anything you would have put him through. He had already been ignored by you for long enough. If he had have stayed as a member of your peerage, then there is a high chance that he would have gone stray, and we would have had to deal with a young and powerful devil. Grafia explained as she stared Rias in the eye. No, I would have showed him how I truly felt, she said, only for Grafia's look to harden. How you really felt? Do you actually think that he would just accept the fact that you had suddenly changed and actually return the feelings that he had? She asked rhetorically as Rias could only glare at her. He cared about me, she said, not seeing that she was in the wrong. He used to care about you. But those feelings started dimming the more you ignored him for the filthy pervert. You were drawn to the pervert as his powers weren't hidden away behind a proper lock like Naruto's. The pervert's power could be shown whenever. But not Naruto's. He had to suffer more than he ever had before. It was only after that you started to notice him. But once you did, it was too late. He had already moved on and didn't need you. I took him under my wing, as my queen, as I know that he wouldn't take being a member of your peerage anymore. She continued as Rias backed away. You're saying all I cared about was his power? That's nothing but a lie. She denied as Grafia scoffed. Then where were you when he needed you? When he wanted to confess to you, what were you doing? You were too busy trying to give yourself to the perv just to get out of your engagement. After all that, can you really say that he would accept anything you had to say? Trust me on this, Rias, as his new king. I know that Naruto would not be happy serving under a king like you, Grafia said as she turned to walk away. After all, with how his life was growing up, he would rather be around those that he can trust. Those who can help break his curse. Goodbye, Rias-sama. Think over the mistakes you have made. With those last words, Grafia left, leaving Rias as angry to disappear as she realized that everything that was said was true. Yet she was also curious about this curse. Flashback end. Don't worry, this isn't the end. Rias won't drop the subject easily. Well then, I guess I couldn't expect much. We always spoiled Rias, so when we took away Naruto, it was like we were denying her something, Surzek said before he saw a small magic circle appear on his desk. The two watched as a hologram of Naruto appeared from the circle. He bowed to the two devils in front of him. Lucifer-sama. Grafia-sama, he said. Ah, young Naruto, welcome. We were just wondering how you were doing. I must say I like your clothing choice, Surzek said as Naruto had taken off his jacket and was now reporting in his singlet. Thank you, Surzek-sama. I am getting in contact with you because I need help with something here in the Isles, he said, causing Grafia to become suspicious and a little worried. Is there a problem? She asked as Naruto turned to his king. Not in the way you were thinking. After discussing this with Revel, we were both thinking of properly moving to the Isles and making it our home and base of operations. We both enjoy it here, he explained. Does Revel know what your true intentions are? She asked as Naruto nodded, folding his arms. She knows that I am doing this as a way to be away from her. She supports me in the decision, he said before letting out a small laugh as a smile was on his face. I really must thank Lady Phoenix the next I see her for giving me such a wonderful girl to be my first piece. He laughed again. Naruto-kun. Once your time is up in Berseria, if you decide that you will be living in Berseria, how will you attend Ko to keep up your studies? Surzek asked as Grafia stared on interested. My Garganta will get me to Ko easily. And don't worry, the only reason that I would originally appear 2 hours later was because I couldn't properly use it. After awakening my sacred gear properly, I found that when I used it, I would come out on the other side at the exact time I left. He explained as they watched him turn and look behind him. I'm sorry, but we must cut this short. Naruto apologized. Lucifer-sama, will you lend me some people to help build a house for me and my peerage? He asked as he turned to the red-haired Mao. We'll see, Naruto-kun. You just go have fun on your vacation, he said before the door his office opened. The occupants turned to see Rias there, glaring at the silver-haired maid who only gave an stoic gaze in return. Surzek smiled before his gaze wandered to Naruto, who looked back to him and gave him a nod. Naruto bowed as Rias's gaze turned to him. Lucifer-sama, Grafia-sama. I hope you two have a good time. I must leave, my potential queen and someone important to me are calling me, he said before he heard Rias call his name. Naruto. Please forgive me. Come back and be my knight. Please. She begged as Naruto's back was to her. That request, he said, trailing off, giving some hope to the girl, is something that I cannot grant. He finished as the girl was shocked as her hope was shattered. Why? She asked, looking at the ground. Rias Gremory. My life has been filled with despair since the moment I was born. I would have parts of my life where I was able to find what I believed was what I deserved after all I'd been through. But that was nothing but a foolish ideal held by someone who was an utter fool. As such, what you did to me is but another addition to my ever-growing despair, making my ever-longing wait that much longer. Farewell, Rias. He finished as the hologram disappeared. Rias's gaze was stuck to the ground as his words bounced around in her head. All this time, she started. He's been waiting for something that he could see as the end. The thing that ends despair's long grip on his life and make him feel happier about himself. To make him realize that he doesn't have to suffer within despair. And like everyone else, he too can have happiness. Grafia finished as she bowed to her king. I'll take my leave, she said before disappearing. Surzek could only watch as Rias turned around and walked out of his office. He could see that she was still reeling from the fact that Naruto had originally seen her as the way to break his despair, only for her to screw it up. Feeling sorry for her, he stayed where he was, head in his hands as he let out a heavy sigh. Hopefully, this will allow you to grow more as a king, Rias. To not make the same mistake, and hopefully, you can learn how to handle things when they reach the end," he said before getting back to work. "Good luck with your life from now on, Naruto. Knowing your supposed luck from what Graphias told me, your happiness could be ended within an instant. A positive for the negative," he thought to himself. "But you're a strong kid. You can bounce back from anything," he thought before he went back to work. "I hope Milikas can grow to be as strong as you," were his last thoughts before he drowned himself in paperwork. With Naruto. After saying what he did to Rias and cutting the connection, Naruto was standing around in an empty room of his house. Currently he was staring at the ground before he opened up a garganta. Walking through, he ignored as Revel called to him as Velvet looked on from behind her, curious as to the reason he would just suddenly leave. Looking at the younger girl in front of her, she placed a hand on her shoulder as Revel turned to her. Walking to the lounge with the younger girl following her. They both sat down on chairs as Miyuki walked in and looked around in search for Naruto. "What's wrong with Naruto?" she asked. Guessing from how he acted, he had to deal with her. Revel answered as she looked Velvet in the eye. "Her?" Velvet asked, confused as she wondered who Revel was referring to. "Naruto-kun's previous king before he took on the placement of queen under the devil Graphia Lucifuge," Revel said. She went to continue only for Velvet to interrupt her. "Explain who Graphia is later, Naruto, and her first," Velvet demanded as Revel nodded. "Right. As I was saying, Naruto-kun was formerly a knight under the heiress of the Gremory clan, Rias Gremory. From what I can gather, he wasn't treated the way some people believe the Gremory treated their peerage. So whenever he interacts with her, he seems to be put into a bad mood. Guess he won't be letting go of the grudge," she said as Velvet thought on what she was told. "And now, with his own peerage, he plans on making sure no one ever feels the same thing he did?" she asked as Revel shrugged. "I wouldn't know. I've only been Naruto-kun's bishop for a week now. We really haven't bonded much besides what we've done here," she explained as Velvet brought her hand to her chin in thought. "From what I've seen so far, Naruto tries to make those around him happy," she said as Revel nodded. "The fact he has been trying to keep Miyuki as happy as possible for the short time he has been here tells me that with how Naruto is acting, he wants people to never experience what he feels. I also gathered that he has been scouting me. But I have 2 questions," she finished as she stared at the blonde girl. "Ask away and I'll try and answer all of them," Revel said as Velvet stared her in the eye. "First of all, what piece am I being scouted for?" she said as Revel released a sigh. "How it is so far. You are going to be the queen of Naruto-kun's peerage," she said as shock appeared on Velvet's face. "Why the queen?" she asked, shocked. "Naruto-kun has seen that you are determined in your quest for revenge." She paused as Velvet went to say something only for Revel to stop her. "He has explained to me that about what happened. Being a member of his peerage, he doesn't want his own peerage to have secrets between its members. Back to the fact of why he wants you to be the queen. Naruto also needs someone to help him run the peerage. While I can gladly help him with that, I can tell he doesn't want to trouble with every little matter," she continued as Velvet nodded. "Okay then," she said simply. "Not only that, but Miyuki is also a huge factor to his decision," Revel said looking towards the small girl who was using crayons to draw a picture. "Miyu-chan is a factor to me becoming his queen? How?" she asked. "Naruto-kun had told me this a couple days ago. He enjoys the company of the 2 of you. He's grown quite attached to Miyuki," she said smiling. "From the little bit of his past that he has told me, he never got to experience the feeling of a family. And I think, seeing how you and Miyuki are, he wants to make sure that she will have the family that he never got. So if you became his queen, then the 2 of you together could truly be a proper family to Miyuki," she finished as Miyuki's voice caught their attention. "Hello, Mr. Fox, why are you here?" she said as they saw a fox sitting on the table sitting in front of the little girl as it stared at her. The orange-furred fox stared at her before moving towards her. She raised her hand and petted the animal on his head. The fox leaned into her touch before he moved into the girl's lap and started licking the bottom of her chin. The little girl laughed as Velvet moved over to her. The fox turned his head to her as the blood-red eyes he had stared into her golden ones. The long ears that resembled a rabbit's more than a fox's had perked up more as he caught a scent on her. They watched as he moved over to her before he sniffed her some more. Velvet crouched down as the fox started making a yipping sound. Placing her human hand out, the fox opened his maw and lightly bit down, not enough to break the skin, but only enough as he started to pull her towards the door. Picking the fox up and holding him in one hand, she turned to Revel, who had stood up and moved over to Miyuki. "Can you please look after her?" she asked as Revel nodded. Don't worry. I'll keep her safe, Ravel said as Miyuki looked up to her worried. Mama, what's going on? She asked as Velvet smiled. I'm just gonna go find Naruto-san. That's all, she said as the fox yipped again. Okay then. Go find Papa and bring him back, she said smiling with her eyes closed, missing the blush that appeared on Velvet's face. Walking out of the house quickly, Velvet started to run into the forest following the direction in which the fox was taking her by pointing its tail. Meanwhile, what Miyuki has just said had just clicked inside Ravel's head. She turned to the young girl quickly, a shocked expression clearly on her face. Did you just call Naruto-kun Papa? She asked, pausing to make sure. She got a large smile and a nod in return. Yep. Papa has been doing the same thing Mama has, and he's only known me for a week. For that, and for how Mama seems to like him, I could only think that Papa is a good thing to call him, she said smiling. She grabbed the drawing that she was currently working on and showed it to Ravel. She saw that it was a normal drawing that a child would normally make. On it was 4 people. She saw 2 people standing on the left side with blonde hair. She looked over the drawing before she looked back at the young girl. Looking over to the right side, she saw another person that had long black hair and a red-colored arm. In between the taller blonde and the black hair woman was a drawing of a little girl with black hair. On the piece of paper at the top, she saw the words, "My family." Is this how you see your family? Who is this next to Naruto? She asked as Miyuki pointed to the people. That's you? She said, pointing to the shorter blonde. Why am I here? She asked, surprised. Because I see you as my big sister, Miyuki said as Ravel's eyes widened. Ravel couldn't hold herself as she wrapped her arms around Miyuki and pulled her into a tight hug. Miyuki simply giggled before returning the hug as the Ravel was laughing slightly. I'm finally an older sister, she yelled in happiness as she pulled away. With Velvet. She was currently walking around the dense forests on the outskirts of town, the orange-furred fox pointing her in the direction of the person she was looking for. She eventually came to a large cliff where the waves below constantly crashed into it, spraying it upwards. Looking around as the fox that was on her shoulder did the same, she eventually saw a small pillar of smoke rising to her right. Looking to the fox on her shoulder, she turned back to the pillar as she walked off in the direction of the smoke. After wandering for about 10 minutes, she eventually came to a destroyed clearing. Looking around, she eventually found Naruto, who was trying to gather energy into his right hand. She watched as a black orb had formed into his hand. Running towards a tree, she watched as he slammed his hand into the tree with the energy dispersing. She watched as he stepped away before he formed a green javelin in his right hand and cut the tree down in annoyance. The spear disappeared as she started to walk towards him. She watched as he turned to her. She stopped slightly as Naruto's eyes had changed from their normal sapphire blue right eye, and his emerald green left eye, to a golden color on a black background. He let out a sigh as his eyes turned back to their normal color. What are you doing out here, Velvet-san? He asked as she gave him a cocky smile. Looking for you. Didn't expect to see you just leave like that. You looked like a kid who was throwing a tantrum. She mocked as Naruto closed his eyes and scoffed. I just had to blow out some steam, that's all, he said with a smile as she raised a brow. Because of your former king, right? She asked as Naruto's eyes widened. How did you? He was cut off by the woman in front of him. Ravel told me. She explained what she knew of your past. She told him as Naruto shook his head. That's my bishop and manager for you, he said, chuckling lightly. Making sure that we are set for the future, she said as Naruto looked her in the eye questionably. What do you mean we? He asked as Velvet walked over to a fallen log and sat down. He followed and sat down next to her, as the fox on her shoulder jumped off and moved over to Naruto. He turned his attention to the fox for a bit as he pet the animal, getting a happy yip in return. So that's how you were able to find me, he said as Velvet looked to the fox in his lap. Yeah. That little guy was the only way that I could find you. He led me right to you, she said as Naruto stared down at the fox in his lap. No matter what, you've always had my back. Ever since I found you. Isn't that right, Kurama? He asked as the fox just seemed to nod. Velvet looked at the two before Naruto turned back to her. So, you decided that you would join my peerage? Naruto asked as she nodded. Yes, I did. I'm joining to make sure you can keep yourself safe and for her, she said as Naruto nodded understandingly. Miyuki. I want her to remain safe. Not only her, but you as well. Since I came here, you've been nothing but helpful, and Miyuki has been a light in my relatively dark world. I want to keep her safe, so that she won't fall to my curse," he said as he looked to the ground. "Your curse?" Velvet asked, curious. "It's something I believe is within my life. When I find something that I can see as my light, it always ends up being taken away from me. It's happened quite a few times. Now it's the source of my true power. I use the power of the despair I feel, in which I can channel it, and then I change," he said as entered his sacred gear form. "So that's your power," she stated as she looked him in the eye. Emerald green eyes stared into golden as he turned his head away. "Despair's onslaught Murcielago. That is the name of my sacred gear," he explained as the form disappeared. "With it, I have a lot of abilities that are useful, such as high-speed regeneration." He started as she looked intrigued. "High-speed regeneration, huh? What can you heal with it?" she asked as he smiled lightly. "Just about anything. I focus my energy to the wound and then it is simply gone within a second. Though there are two things that I can't regenerate: my brain and other vital organs. Should those be destroyed, I'm finished," he explained as Velvet laughed. "So all we have to do is make sure that doesn't happen. Sounds easy enough," she joked as Naruto went on. "Then, as you saw earlier, I can form orbs made of pure energy. Though, the difference is that I was trying to create a close-range attack. Usually, I simply gather the energy and then release it. I can form it into a ball and make it stronger depending on how much energy I use for it. When it is formed into a ball, it's called a Siro. I can form it around my hand without making anyone take notice and release a much weaker version. The difference is that this attack travels more as a wave and faster than most people can track. It's called the Bala. While not as strong as Siro, it can move a lot quicker," he said as Velvet had an idea. "You said that you were trying to make a close-range attack using your Siro as a base for the attack, right?" she asked as he nodded. "Well, I might be able to help with that," she said, standing up. "Oh yeah? And what should I be doing then?" he asked as Velvet's demonic arm came out. "Show me your Siro. Let me see the base of the attack," she ordered as she pointed to a tree. "Not even my queen, and yet you're ordering around like I'm your husband or something," he joked, getting a blush from her. "Shut up and do it already," she yelled as her cheeks were still colored a healthy red. Laughing to himself, he pointed his hand to the tree she pointed at. His energy formed in his hand as it formed a large orb. "Siro," he said as the orb turned into a large beam and destroyed the tree with ease. "Is that better?" he asked as she saw the damage. Bringing her demonic arm up, she started gathering her own energy into the palm of her hand. "Just watch this. It might help," she said as he stared at her open palm. He then saw as a small ball of energy was created. The energy inside seemed to be spinning around as it grew to the size of her entire hand. He watched as it seemed to hold its shape even while it continued to spin. "This is my attack. Impulse Desire," she called it as she slammed the orb into the ground, causing a crater to form with cracks reaching up from the impact area. "Now, explain that attack," she said as Naruto looked at her confused. "Why? You know the attack, there isn't a reason for me to explain it," he said as she shook her head. "If you explain it, you might figure out what you're missing with your attack," she said as he realized what she wanted him to do. "Well, you formed the attack first by forcing your energy into your palm," he started as she nodded. "And how was my energy moving?" she asked with a smile. "It was rotating wildly," he said as she nodded. "Exactly. You want your attack to work so that it will work as a close-range attack so that if you released it, there's less chance of hitting your friends. But what you were missing when you tried it earlier when I walked in, was that you needed to use the rotation as a way to help the attack hold its shape," she explained as Naruto nodded slowly. "By using the rotation to keep shape, you can focus on adding more power into the attack to make it stronger as well. And finally comes containment. Being able to hold the attack while it is rotating in that single shape alone will help with it staying as a ball for the attack completely," she finished as Naruto raised his hand up. "So from what you're telling me, I realize that I already have the power and containment when it comes to the attack, but I'm too used to releasing it instead of holding it. That's the reason why it dispersed earlier," he summarized as she nodded with her arms crossed over her chest. "Exactly. Now give it a try. This time, start with rotating your energy until it forms a small ball, then add in more power to increase the size and finally contain it into that size," she told him as she walked over to stand by him. She watched as his energy formed as his eyes had changed into their golden color with a black background. His energy had formed in his hand, the problem was that he wasn't rotating it. He was simply holding it in his palm. She went to say something only to stop as she saw his eyes reverting back to their normal state. Looking back at the orb, she watched said black and green orb had started to peel away. The black and green color faded away completely to reveal a glowing blue orb in his hand. Though once he moved an inch, the orb exploded, sending him flying into a tree. She looked over to him as he pulled himself up and stood to his feet. "What the hell happened just then?" he asked as she sighed. "You probably overloaded the attack just then," she guessed as he dusted himself off. "Hey Naruto," she called, getting his attention. "Yeah?" he asked as she looked at him questioningly. "Just before where you were trying to create that attack. Your eyes were different. Why did your eyes change?" she asked him. "It's been happening while I've been training lately. Murcielago said it was because I had become more used to his power." He paused as he reached into a garganta and pulled out his sword. "I'll experience some changes and my powers will spike. It's just my body reacting to the powers of my balance breaker," he finished as the sword disappeared in green flames. "Okay then," she said as a smile appeared on his face. "What, were you worried about me?" he asked as she simply walked past him and grabbed his arm, her demonic arm having become bandaged once again as she walked them both back to the boy's house. Kurama, having been sitting on a rock, ran over to Velvet before he jumped onto her shoulder and made himself comfortable. She smiled at the fox and petted him softly as Naruto now walked by her side. "He likes you," he said as she looked towards him. "Well, I like him as well. Any canine animal really," she said as Naruto looked at her with a raised brow. "Really? To be honest, you look like more of a cat person," he said as Velvet looked away. "I like canines cause they don't abandon their masters. Though I'm also allergic to cats," she admitted, embarrassed. "Hey, no need to be embarrassed about that. Everyone has something they're embarrassed about," he stated, snickering slightly as she turned to him with a glare. "Even you?" she asked, annoyed. "I'm afraid of," he trailed off, mumbling his answer. "I'm afraid of? Afraid of what?" she asked, only for him to mumble his answer again. Getting annoyed quickly, she pointed her wrist blade at his stomach and asked slowly, "What are you afraid of?" "I'm afraid of needles, okay," he shouted at her as she started laughing. He blushed in embarrassment as they continued their walk, Velvet's laughter calming down into quiet snickering. Naruto's home, Berseria. 8 p.m. The two teens had both arrived back in the blonde's house and walked in to see a sight that brought a smile to the blonde's face. Gesturing to his companion to be quiet, he moved over to the couch where he saw Ravel and Miyuki asleep together, the younger girl having fallen asleep using the blonde girl's lap as a pillow. Velvet walked over before she picked the young girl up. She went to leave only for Naruto, who had Ravel under his arm, to stop her. "Why don't you just stay here for the night? It'll be easier since I can reincarnate you before we go to sleep," he suggested as she nodded with a soft smile. She followed him as he stopped at Ravel's room and tucked his bishop into bed with the same smile that seemed to be stuck on his face for most of the day. Once that was done, he led Velvet to his bedroom. Once they reached his room, he opened the door and let her in. Velvet walked in and placed Miyuki down on the bed before she sat down next to the girl. Naruto smiled at her before his expression turned serious. "You ready?" he asked as she nodded. "Just one request," she said as he looked confused. "Once I'm your queen, don't treat me like a slave. I am your queen, someone you can trust no matter what," she finished as he smiled before she laid down as the queen appeared in Naruto's hand. "As my queen, my problems are your problems. As such, we can sort them out together," he said before placing the queen upon her chest. "It's time. I'll ask you once more. Are you ready to become a devil and stand by my side?" he asked as his queen piece glowed green slightly with a green magic circle appearing underneath her. "I am," Velvet said calmly. "All right then. Velvet Crow, I hereby reincarnate you, to stand by my side as the queen of my peerage," he said as the queen piece slowly disappeared into Velvet's body. Once it fully disappeared, the magic circle followed not long after. Once it had disappeared, Naruto watched as Velvet sat up and looked at her hands. He could tell that she was trying to understand the new power that flowed through her body thanks to the queen piece. This power. She started as she felt as though she could take on a whole army and win without breaking a sweat. "It's amazing, isn't it? Your queen piece has raised all of your abilities. As you are now, you might be able to go toe-to-toe with me when I use Murcielago," Naruto stated as he grabbed a pillow from off the bed. "Where are you going?" Velvet asked as she looked at the back of her king. "To the lounge. I'll be sleeping on the couch. See you in the morning, Vel," he said, shortening her name. Velvet watched as he opened but was stopped by the voice of Miyuki, who sat up and rubbed her eyes sleepily. Mama? She asked as Velvet smiled and pet the girl on her head. Hello, my little girl. How was your day with Ravel? She asked the girl as Naruto stood at the door and listened to the interaction between mother and daughter. It was so fun. We played games all day until we took a nap. She spoke happily as a smile appeared on the face of the two teens. Did you find Papa? The girl asked as both teens were now shocked. Papa. Naruto thought to himself. You mean Naruto, right, Miyu-chan? Velvet asked as the little girl nodded. Yep, she said before she saw said person at the door. Getting off the bed, she ran over to him before throwing herself at his legs. Naruto was knocked out of his thoughts as the little girl held onto his legs tightly. Looking down, he saw Miyuki's blue eyes staring into his own eyes. The smile that was on her face was one that Naruto always wanted to see every day with her. Miyuki's face shifted to one of concern as she felt liquid hit her forehead. Papa, are you okay? She asked as Naruto brought a hand to his emerald eye and wiped away a tear. I'm fine. Didn't think I still had these, he said as he picked the girl up and walked over to the bed. Miyuki was holding onto him tightly as her smile returned 5 times stronger than it did before. Though she was once again confused as Naruto placed her down before walking back to the door. Where are you going? She asked with her cheeks puffed in annoyance. Your mother and you can have the bed, I'm gonna be sleeping on the couch, he told her as she ran over to him again and grabbed his hand. She pulled with all the strength her little arms could muster as she dragged him over to the bed. Getting behind him, she pushed with all the strength that she could muster until Naruto was sitting on the bed. Panting slightly, she was smiling her usual smile. One that caused Naruto to let on his own, no matter how small it was. You will sleep here with Mama and I, she said as the two teens looked at each other before looking away with blushes on their faces. Miyu-chan, are you serious? Velvet asked, shocked at what her daughter wanted her to do. Yep. That's how families sleep, she said before climbing onto the bed and getting under the blankets. Naruto stared at Velvet as she stared back, a small blush on both of their faces. Their teenage minds not believing that this was an event about to happen. Naruto shrugged his shoulders before he got under the blankets of his king-sized bed. Velvet sighed before she did the same. The two teens simply looked at the roof before they felt Miyuki grab their hands. Looking at the girl in between them, they both laid down properly as Miyuki brought both of their arms to rest on top of her. Naruto's left hand being placed on top of Velvet's right. The blush seemed to increase for them before they closed their eyes. But not before they heard something that brought a smile to their faces. I love you, was what they heard from the girl in between them. We love you too, Miyuki, Velvet said, looking at the girl in between them. Naruto's face still had the unusual smile present as he nodded at his queen words before he shut his eyes. Miyuki, who had one eye open, stared at Naruto before she moved so she was closer to him. Velvet moved closer until they were all bunched together in the middle of the bed. Velvet on the right. Her human arm laid on top of the blanket. Miyuki in the middle with her smile still present. And Naruto on the left. His left arm above the blankets as his hand rested on top of Velvet's own. They all fell asleep a few minutes later, the quiet sound of the others' breathing having lulled them all to sleep. Morning. Berseria. Naruto was awoken by the light of the sun as it shone through an open curtain. Sitting up, he felt a light weight on his lap. Looking down, he saw Miyuki had found her way onto his lap as they slept. Letting out a small laugh, he smiled before noticing that an arm was currently laying across his waist, going along Miyuki's back. Following the arm, he saw that Velvet had moved closer, probably when Miyuki had moved. Smiling at the peaceful face of his queen and his new daughter, Naruto moved both of them off of his body before grabbing some clothes from his drawers. Walking towards the bathroom, he noticed that it was a sunny day with no clouds in the sky. Looking back towards his room, he had an idea for them to spend the day together. 30 minutes later. After having a shower, Naruto walked out wearing a pair of orange shorts with an open orange and black jacket. He had no shirt on underneath. He walked down to his living room where he found his queen in her normal attire with a plate of scones in hand. She was sitting down in a chair before she placed the plate down and grabbed a book. Opening the book, she went to take a bit of one of her scones only for Naruto to lean in over her shoulder and take a bit for himself. She jumped back as he swallowed the food and didn't move from his place behind the chair she was sitting on. Morning, he said as she glared at him. Morning, was all she said before she grabbed another scone and bit into it. So I was thinking, he started trailing off at the end. Of what? she asked. Why don't we go to the beach? Spend a day together, he said as she thought about it. Nodding at his thought, she said that she would be back in a bit. Walking out the door, Naruto looked and saw that she had left her plate, which had 3 scones left, on the arm of the chair. Walking over, he grabbed it before walking over and opening the oven. Placing the plate inside, he walked over to a shelf he had and grabbed a book he enjoyed. Sitting down, he found where he left off and let the words engulf him in their story. He was brought out of his reading a few minutes later, as Velvet came back in. She had a bag in her hand. She woken up yet? She asked in regards to their daughter. Not yet, he replied as she walked to the stairs. I'll wake her up. Can you wake Ravel-san? She asked as he closed his book and stood to his feet. Sure, he said, following after her. Eventually, he came to Ravel's room. Knocking on the door, he soon had it open as Ravel stepped out dressed in a maroon-colored dress with a sun hat on her head. Good, you're up. Hope you brought some swimwear, he said as she nodded. We going to the beach today? She asked hopefully. So far she has just explored around Abel and the forests outside the town just to get used to the surroundings. Being able to go to the beach that the island nation had was something she wanted to do. Yep, he said as he turned around and walked away. We'll be leaving soon, so be ready, he said, only to have her run past him with a fully packed bag. How the? He asked, confused. I've been ready to go to the beach since we first got here, she said before pulling out a second bag. I've also taken the liberty to pack you some clothes as well, she said as he nodded at her. Thank you for that, my lovely bishop, he said, getting a blush from her. And then no problem, she stuttered as she turned around. You should be grateful that I care about my reputation, she said, getting a raised brow. How should I be grateful that you care about your reputation? He asked, crossing his arms as he walked down to stand by her side. Because that means I'll have to do anything you want me to in order to look like a wonderful piece, she stated with arrogance. Be that as it may, I could just tell people that you were terrible, he said as she turned to him, shocked. Why would you do that? She asked, shocked. Naruto gave her a smile before placing a hand on her head. That way, you would stay as my lovely bishop forever and I wouldn't have to worry about someone taking you away from me, he said honestly as her blush increased. Their conversation was stopped as Velvet walked down with a still half-asleep Miyuki. Grabbing Velvet's bag, Naruto walked outside as Velvet walked in front of them, her being the native, leading them to the beach. After about 10 minutes of walking, Naruto was told to wait outside the changing rooms, seeing as he was already dressed for the beach. He stood around before he felt a sudden chill strike him. Looking up, his eyes widened as it had started snowing. Knocking on the door, Velvet walked out still fully dressed. Looking at him confused till she noticed that it had started snowing. Closing the door, he heard the groans of disappointment come from Ravel as she was told to get dressed in her normal clothes. Once that was done, they all walked out as Naruto looked around, his blade and partner Murcielago, in his hand fully drawn. Reaching into her bag, Velvet pulled out her gauntlet and placed it on her right arm. They both looked forward as they heard footsteps coming from in front of them. Would you look at this, Commander? Our target out in the open, a voice stated. Why, yes. The only problem is the two in front of her, they heard another say as the two stepped in front of them. Standing in front of them was a tall, beautiful and slender woman with long light blue hair and blue eyes. She wore a general's apparel with long sleeves, a blue scarf on her neck, and high-heeled boots. She also has a tattoo on her chest. Her blue eyes stared at the two teens as if they were her playthings. At her waist was a rapier. Standing next to her was a girl around their age. She has short black hair and a twin-tail style and black eyes. She wears a black sailor uniform and wears a red belt that has a red side skirt cover. She also wears red gauntlets. She had a sword at her side. She wears the outfit with long black socks and black shoes. The two stared at the two teens in front of them before the blue-haired woman stepped forward. Hello, I am Miss Death, a mercenary hired by some interesting people to capture that little girl behind you two, the now named Miss Death said as she pointed to Miyuki, who was being held by Ravel. Oh? And you think I'll just hand her over to you? Naruto asked snidely as the woman shrugged. I wasn't asking. I was letting you know what happens when I'm walking over your corpse, she said as she drew her rapier. Naruto, thinking quickly, opened a garganta behind Ravel and Miyuki, turning Ravel around and lightly pushing her through it with his foot. He closed it quickly before he turned back to his Death and her follower. Well, it looks like you won't be capturing anyone now, he said as a look of annoyance came over her face. You've managed to delay it. I'll just make you open up that portal after I'm through torturing you, she said, smiling as Naruto's face showed no emotion. Velvet. I want you to take care of the girl, he said, looking over to the girl around their age only to see her missing. He felt his pesquisa go off. Turning around and raising his arm, the girl's sword had found itself stuck in Naruto's. Smiling a cocky smile, the girl was covered in a dark aura as she put more force into her swing. Naruto's eyes widened as he suddenly couldn't feel his left arm from below his wrist. Velvet moved and swung her blade at the girl, only for her to dodge the swing and move over to his Death's side. Nice work, Kurome. Making the blonde a cripple before the fight could begin. She praised the now-named Kurome, who smiled. Thank you, Death-sama. It was easy to get around him while you kept him distracted, she said, only to hear Naruto let out a small laugh. Looking at his opponents from behind his queen, who was standing in front of him as a shield, he brought his left hand into view and showed that his hand had already regenerated. I have to admit, that was interesting. You managed to fully get through my hierro and cut off my arm. That's a feat that not many have done. He praised them as he stepped in front of Velvet with Murcielago at his side. Why don't we do some introductions? He suggested, trying to buy time. Alright, I'll play along, Death said as she stepped forward. As I told you before, I am Death. The girl at my side is Kurome, she said as the girl nodded her head. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, he said as the ones in front of him drew their weapons. This is Velvet Crow, my queen, he said as a hint of realization came across Death's face. So you and your small group are devils? She asked as Naruto nodded. Well then, she started before rushing Naruto and pushing him away from his queen. Let's let our subordinates have fun while we face each other, she finished before kicking him into the surrounding trees. Velvet could only watch before she was forced to dodge an attack from Kurome. Don't let your guard down, for it might cost you your life, she said before rushing Velvet, who met her blow for blow with her gauntlet blade. Meanwhile, Naruto was dodging thrusts from Death, who was constantly trying to end him before he could fight back. Deflecting an attack, he moved quickly and kicked Death in her side and sent her flying into a tree. Backing away, he placed his blade in a ready position as she stood to her feet with a smile. I must say, when you switch to offense, your attacks can really pack a punch, she said as Naruto stared her down. Though it felt like a flea bite to me, she said as Naruto's eyes narrowed in annoyance. Is that so? He asked rhetorically. Guess I'll have to try harder, he finished as his Death gave him a questioning look. Why are you doing this? She asked as Naruto charged her. Doing what? He asked as their blades met. Both jumped back before rushing forwards again. They dodged the off-handed attacks the other sent their way while having a slight talk. Protecting someone you don't even know, she said as she moved to the left and tried to pierce Naruto, who disappeared and reappeared behind her using Sonido. Miyuki is nothing but a scared girl, he shouted as she spun around and stopped his attack with a knife made of pure ice. But that's the thing. You haven't heard the truth, she said as she pushed him back before the ground around her was frozen. The truth? He asked as he jumped into a tree. Yes. The truth behind the connection of your dear queen and that little girl, she said as Naruto pointed his blade at her. Before I attack you, I want you to tell me what you mean, he said, getting some breath back. Miyuki Crow, as her name would be, isn't a normal little girl. I've been on this island doing research on my target since I was given the mission, and to see that little girl treated the way she was disgusted me greatly. Death admitted as a look of shock appeared on Naruto's face. But I can see why, she said as she stared at Naruto, who only glared at her. And what reason would that be? He asked as he gathered his energy around him. You know the saying, don't you? Death asked as she took off her hat. Humans fear what they don't understand and hate what they fear, she said, giving Naruto a slightly edited quote. And what does that have to do with anything? He asked as his sword disappeared. Death raised a brow at the action before she continued. Everything. They hated the girl because they don't understand how she came to be, she said as Naruto looked on confused. And how did she came to be? He asked as he felt an energy spike in the distance. She was created as a lock, she answered as Naruto turned his attention back to her. That feeling you got just now. It was what is known by some as the awakening of calamity. Without the lock of calamity, the Lord of Calamity will rampage once more, she explained as a look of slight worry appeared on Naruto's face. You mean? He asked, having a hunch where she was going. Yep. Miyuki Crow was created by the world itself as the lock to prevent Velvet Crow, your queen, from going on a rampage and destroying the world. She explained with a dark smile as Naruto looked to where Velvet was. Damn it all, he said as he turned back to her. You splitting us up was all part of the plan, wasn't it? He accused her as his power leaked out. Not originally, but once I saw you send away the Lock of Calamity, I knew it was only a matter of time before the Lord of Calamity went out of control. I could tell when I saw her that the lock was what was keeping her from destroying everything. And now with the lock Satan knows where, it's only a matter of time before she destroys everything. His death said before she broke out in laughter. Ha ha ha, soon all the weaklings will die and only those who are truly strong will survive. A true world order will form from the ashes, and for those who oppose the order, they will die thanks to the Lord of Calamity being our weapon. She continued to laugh until she felt a large surge of power. She stopped laughing and saw Naruto floating above the ground in his sacred gear form. His black wings fully spread out as the white cloak fluttered gently in the small wind. A scowl was found on the usually stoic boy's face as he formed a green javelin. So that's how you live, huh? A philosophy where the weak must die so that the strong can live on, he said, pausing as he let the thought sink into his head. His death rushed him with a glare as multiple spikes of ice formed at his feet. They all moved, getting ready to impale the boy as his death thrusted her now drawn rapier in an attempt to kill the boy. Naruto only looked on before he disappeared and reappeared below her. Spinning around as one of his wings were wrapped around him, he flung it open, sending her into the arm from the attack. Appearing above her, he swung down with all his might, sending her hurtling back to the ground. Crashing in the now destroyed, frozen ground, he landed beside her before stomping on her chest. The action caused her to get sent into the ground more as a circle formed at his fingertips. If that's the philosophy you live with, then by all rights, I should kill you here and now, he said as his death closed her eyes, accepting her fate. Only to feel Naruto take his foot off of her chest and start walking back to where his queen was as he turned back to normal. His death brought herself to her feet as she stared at the teen who continued to walk away. He could have ended her, yet he let live. What are you doing? She screamed in confusion as Naruto stopped and looked over his shoulder at her. Letting you live. You lost the battle, there isn't a need to kill you. Nor do I want to kill you, he said before turning back and walking on ahead. Find another way to live. Living the way you are now, all it'll lead to is death, he added before she stopped him again. A group of fallen angels, she said as he turned to face her. This time, confusion written clearly on his face. What do you mean? He asked. The people who hired me and Kirom. It was a group of rogue fallen angels. They knew of the Lord of Calamity and her lock. They are stationed in an old abandoned building to the north, she said as Naruto raised a brow. Why are you telling me this? He asked in a rush as he felt another spike of energy. Because of what you said. If I continue to live by that philosophy, then all I'll get is death, she said sadly as she cradled what she felt was a broken rib. I haven't lived my life enough to let myself die, she finished as Naruto let out a small smirk before a notepad appeared in his hand. Writing on it, he walked back over to her and gave her the page he had written on. Turning around, he started walking quickly as his death looked at the note. On it was an address and under it the words, I have a proposition for you. Meet me at this address tomorrow. Looking at the retreating form of the blonde, she let a small smile appear. Naruto was quickly moving through the trees until he came to where he left Velvet. Looking around, he saw craters and smoke flowing out from them. Looking around, he found Kirom laying against a tree as blood leaked from her mouth. He looked across from her and saw Velvet covered in a red and black aura. Moving closer, Naruto stopped in front of her and grabbed her demonic arm. The clawed fingers dug into his arm as he grunted, feeling some of her dark energy flow into his body while she stole his own. Calm yourself, Velvet, he said as she growled at him. Why should I? These pieces of shit want to take our daughter from us. I won't allow that. I'll kill them before they can even touch her. She snarled in anger as Naruto held her arm tighter as the claws dug into his skin more. He grunted as a small smoke trail started from his arm as he tried to heal the damage that was constantly being made. Look at her, Velvet, he urged as the girl looked towards the scared teen in front of her. She's terrified of you. She wouldn't be able to fight back. Don't waste your time or energy, he said as she started to calm down, as Kirom could only wonder how he managed to calm her. If they try anything, she started as Naruto cut her off. They won't. In fact, I think we could use their help, he said as she looked at him. With what? She asked, confused and angry. Getting payback against the ones who tried to take Miyuki from us. They are under orders from others. Plus his death isn't in any condition to fight. They won't be a problem, he said as she took her claws out of his arm. Opening a garganta, he told her to take a few seconds to compose herself while he went and talked with Kirom. Walking over to the scared teen, he saw as she tried to back away in fear. Don't be scared. I'm not going to hurt you, he said as she was hesitant to trust him. Listen, when you meet up with this death, she'll tell you about a meeting. Go with her, he said as she looked at him with fear in her eyes. Why should I believe you? She asked as Naruto looked at her. Because I'm the reason you're still breathing, he said before walking to his queen who was waiting for him. Kirom watched as they both walked into the portal before she saw it close. Looking to the sky, she watched as it cleared up and a light shined on her. Hearing noise beside her, she watched as his death sat down next to her and showed her the note. We might have a new employer. She laughed as Kirom closed her eyes. I need a nap, she said as his death laughed before they both stood to their feet and walked to the nearest hospital. ORC Club Room. The peerage of Rias Gremory were all assembled as an awkward silence filled the room. Before it was interrupted by Issei as he walked through the door. Before he could say anything, everyone was shocked to see a garganta open above him and for Revel to fall through and land on the privet. Her knees met the back of his head. When she got her bearings, she quickly stood up and looked at everyone in the room. Miyuki was hiding behind her as Akino walked over. Revel-sama, what are you doing here? She asked as Revel looked at her. That idiot booted me through the garganta when he saw that a fight was about to start, she said annoyed as Akino noticed the small girl behind. Who is that adorable little thing? She asked as Revel blinked. I'm Miyuki Crow, she said shyly as she continued to hide behind Revel. Akino got down on her knees and smiled kindly at the girl as Miyuki looked away. Hello Miyuki-chan. I'm Akino Himejima. But you can just call me Akino Nisama, she said gently as Miyuki looked at her. Nice to meet you Akino Nisama, she said as she continued to hide behind Revel. Akino smiled before looking over to Kaneko. She saw this and sighed heavily before handing Akino a lollipop. Akino thanked her and promised to pay her back before she turned back to Miyuki. Do you want this candy? She asked gently as Miyuki stared at Revel who nodded. Go on. She's a nice lady, she said as Miyuki walked out from behind Revel and reached for the lollipop. Akino gave the young girl the lollipop, which she instantly placed in her mouth, before she smiled at the girl. Everyone who was in the room stared at the young girl who smiled back at Akino. Small time skip. Revel and Miyuki had getting to know the people of Naruto's former peerage for the past half an hour. Revel saw as to why Naruto kept most of them dear to him. Though she would lightly glare at Rias out of the corner of her eye, but she would also thank her at the same time. If she didn't screw up the way she did, then Naruto never would have left, and she wouldn't be his bishop. Miyuki on the other hand was happy spending time with others that she started to see as her family. Rias, having enough of waiting around and saying nothing, stood up to speak only to be cut off as they all heard the sound of the garganta open. Looking back over to the door, they watched as Velvet jumped out of the garganta and instantly looked around for Miyuki. Mama, she called as the others who looked at Velvet who smiled and walked over to her. Miyuki got off the couch she was on, next to Kaneko, and went and hugged her mother who flinched at the contact. Miyuki pulled away and looked worried at how her mother flinched. Looking up, she saw Velvet holding her side as some blood leaked out. Are you okay? Miyuki asked afraid. Velvet smiled at her and rubbed her head with her non-bloodied hand. I'll be fine. I've been through worse, she said as the others heard Issei, who was still unconscious, groan in pain. Looking over, a smile came to all their faces as Naruto was standing there, his foot lodged somewhere firmly between Issei's lungs and stomach. His face had a small smile as he saw everyone else, but it faded when his eyes met Rias's. Stepping off the perv, he stepped forwards as Asia noticed that he had blood flowing from multiple holes in his right arm. She rushed over to him only for him to stop her. Heal Velvet first, he said as she nodded before moving to the Therian's side and using her sacred gear to heal any wounds on her body. Naruto smiled at how Asia was willing to help someone, but laughed slightly as Velvet looked uncomfortable at how eager Asia was to help her. Akino stood to her feet and walked over to the other blonde in the room, besides Kiba, and stopped in front of him. Naruto's gaze met her own as he saw something in her eyes that he couldn't place. He was caught off guard as she brought him in for a tight hug. Pulling away, she smiled at how he hadn't changed, though she was still worried about the blood that was dripping from his arm. Rias, walking over, stood in front of him, and all he could see was the regret held within her eyes. Velvet, seeing this, stood up and made her way over to the redhead, quickly moved in front of her as she tried to take another step forward. Get out of my way, she said gently as Velvet's left arm came undone. Why should I? Velvet asked as she brought her left arm up. I need to talk with Naruto, she said as Velvet didn't move. Then talk, I don't need to move, Velvet said stubbornly as Miyuki walked over to Naruto and grabbed his leg. Naruto smiled at her as he gently patted her head as Rias glared at Velvet. This doesn't concern you, she said as Velvet gave her signature cocky smirk. It concerns my king, she said as Rias stepped back slightly as Velvet took a step forward. Naruto, seeing where this was going to stop them only for Asia to punch him in the arm where the blood was leaking. He looked at his little sister as she started to heal the holes that were located in his bicep. She needs to hear it from someone else, to show that you have moved on, he heard her say as he watched as Rias was backed against a wall by Velvet. But just because you moved on doesn't mean that you can stop visiting us, she continued once she was finished. I'll try and visit more, he said as he picked up Miyuki. So you're his queen, so what? Rias said, trying to act tough as Velvet stared her in the eye. He was my knight first, she said as Velvet's eyes widened. So you're the one. His former king. I have to thank you, Velvet said as she brought her arm up to her side to rest on her hip. For what? Rias asked, confused. For screwing up so badly with him. If you hadn't have done that, then Naruto would have never come to our home and made me his queen, Velvet said as she walked back over to Naruto, who stood next to the still opened garganta. Maybe next time, look at the diamond in the rough and not the gold in the open, you foolish girl, she said, pushing Naruto through the garganta as Ravel followed after him. Before she went through though, Velvet turned to the rest of the peerage. Thank you all for looking out for Naruto while he was part of this failure's peerage. Don't worry, I'll make sure that he'll visit. We just got a lot of things to do at our home, she said before turning back and walking into the garganta. Oh, and Red, she said, getting Rias's attention. The name's Velvet Crow. Keep that in your mind as you remember that Naruto will never belong to you again, she said before it closed. Though Velvet turned before it closed, and her eyes had changed to a dark shade of red as she was covered in a black and red-colored aura. Those red eyes were gonna haunt her dreams as Rias realized that what Velvet said was true. Because she was so caught up in her greed, so drawn into the fact that Issei's powers had awakened and his sacred gear was the hold of the Welsh dragon, Drake. She never saw the true power that Naruto held within himself. Gritting her teeth in anger, she burned the name into her head. Velvet Crow, she thought in anger. I'll show you. He still cares, I just need to dig deep into his heart to show you. And once I do, you'll realize that he belongs to me. She continued to think, too caught up in her anger to realize that Velvet is not someone to take lightly. Ranbuno Melody. Berseria Cliffside, 6 a.m. Naruto was currently sitting on the edge of a cliff with a large drop into the roaring ocean below. The water thrashed against the rocks before throwing it up. He sat there as he stared off into the distance, wanting to catch the beauty of when dawn finally broke with his own eyes. His right eye had a special ability in which whatever it had seen would never be forgotten. What this eye sees will forever be trapped within the sight of this eye, he thought to himself as he looked to his blade which laid upon the grass next to him. But what this eye cannot see does not exist to me, he continued as he thought back on his past. His time in the orphanage, to the reason behind him leaving and the one thing he would always remember. His mother's words to him, and the emotions within her eyes when she said it. Small flashback. Naruto, at the age of 10, was currently walking away from the orphanage which he called home before he heard something that made him stop. Turning, his eyes widened as the nun who was basically a mother to him stood at the entrance. A bandage over her right eye as tears fell from the left. He looked away slightly before she walked over to him. When she stood in front of him, she brought him into a hug. One filled with the love of a mother, something he wanted for all his life. It's not your fault, she said as he looked into her one brown eye. But he tried to protest only to be cut off. But nothing, you did nothing wrong. You protected your mother, and I couldn't be more proud of you, she said as a tear formed in Naruto's blue eye. There we go, she said before holding him tighter. You're only human, dear, things like this will happen. It's how the world works, but I know that you will come out of it a stronger man, she said as he nodded as the tear trailed down the right side of his face. I will become as strong as possible in order to keep you safe, he said as he returned the hug. I know you will. You my child after all. I will always love you, no matter what. Naruto, she said as his eyes widened even more before he smiled. I love you too, Ka-chan, he said before they broke. They hugged and he walked off. Flashback end. I know the true love of a mother, the pain of betrayal, the sting of death, and the need to protect. All of these things I have experienced, all of them I know. He thought to himself as he stood to his feet. I also know the truth. Despair is nothing, I will overcome my curse. And I will become stronger because of it. He thought with determination in his eyes as Murcielago heard his thoughts. You can do it, partner. Don't let it control your life is yours to control. Murcielago thought as he trusted his partner. Looking towards the distance once more, Naruto allowed a smile to come across his face as he thought on his current peerage members. Turning away from the cliff, he started walking away. Though he stopped and watched as he saw the sun rising in the distance. Everyone, once I gather my peerage, I will return. Zenobia, should we meet again, I hope you can understand. He thought to himself before returning to his home. Meanwhile, the clanging of blades could be heard as a blue-haired teen with a green fringe battled an older man. In her hands was a large sword, one of the holy weapons of the church. Excalibur destruction. She was panting as the man sheathed the two blades he was using. Time we take a break, he said with an Irish as she looked annoyed. I can't take any more breaks. I must get stronger, she said as the man smiled. For the boy isn't lass? He asked smiling. The girl looked away with a small blush on her face. Aye lass, it's good you're trying to get stronger for someone else's sake, but what will you do when you find the boy? You know what happened to him, the man said as she nodded. I remember you telling me. He was thrown out for false accusations, she said gripping her blade tightly. Aye, a lie it was, he said as she glared at him. You lied, she said glaring at him. To keep you safe. If you had known, then you would have gone out of your way to attack the people who got rid of him, he said as she looked away. When we found out, you let your anger control your actions, he said as she started glaring at the ground. And what was I supposed to do? She shouted as she stared at the priest. Tell me, Father Anderson, she screamed as the man, Anderson, sighed. Have patience and get stronger. I know how you're feeling, lass. I quite enjoyed the young lad when I first met him, he said, remembering the blonde boy he grew attached to. How much more training do I need to do? She asked. Not much more. You're doing quite well as you are now. No doubt you and Irina will be sent to investigate Kuo, he said as she raised a brow. Why is that? She asked as he gave her a confused look. Have you not heard that the Excalibur fragments have been stolen? He asked as she looked away embarrassed. What goes on inside that head of yours? He asked as she blushed. Girl stuff, she replied as he nodded. Right. Anyway, time for you to rest, then I'll explain the reason you are going to Kuo soon. And listen this time, Zenobia, he said as she nodded. The blue-haired girl walked over to stand next to the blonde-haired priest as he patted her on her head. You've improved since your first day here. Naruto would be proud, Anderson told her as she smiled. When I see him, I'm gonna make him pay for making me worry, she said. Anderson only laughed as he continued to walk away with Zenobia following. Back with Naruto. Naruto was currently walking around Abel looking for something to make his small group when he heard a cough come from behind him. Turning around, he pointed a finger towards the person only to see his Death and Kurom, both having bandages covering some of their body. Lowering his finger, he watched as they walked closer till they stood by his side. I thought we were to meet at your place, Kurom said as she looked towards Naruto. We will. I just need to grab some things for my peerage, he said as they stopped at a vendor, and he grabbed a spring onion. You cook for your peerage? She asked as Naruto nodded. Yep. My queen is a cook as well. She makes a decent scone, that's for sure, he said before grabbing some flour. That's good. I like eating food, she said as she pulled out a bag and started snacking on biscuits. Once Naruto was done, he returned to his home with his Death following a smile on her face while Kurom was eating her biscuits. He opened the door and walked into the kitchen and placed the food down. Once he had done that, he walked into the living room to find Velvet glaring at his Death as Miyuki was within her lap. Ravel sat next to her, ready to step in and protect her. He walked over before he sat down in between them. Turning to Velvet, he nodded slightly as her glare lessened but still remained. Is Death, what can you tell us of the fallen angels that are based here? He asked as he glanced at her. Nothing much, unfortunately, just that they are up at the church. And there is only one fallen angel. He has a few corrupt priests with him, but other than that it won't be too hard to take them down, she said as Naruto closed his eyes thinking it over. So what? If they wanted Miyuki, they should have tried taking her. I've been getting hungry lately, Velvet said as the glare was still in place. Calm down, Velvet. We will handle them soon, Naruto said calmly as Velvet's glare was turned to him. How can you tell me to calm down when those people sitting in front of me tried kidnapping my daughter? Velvet asked enraged as Naruto glanced at her. They were simply following their contract. As such they are not to blame, Naruto said as Revel gave him a look. Turning to his bishop, he nodded slightly as Revel walked off as Naruto turned back towards his death and Kurom. For tonight you will be on our side, acting as a double agent. You return back to the church while the three of us follow, and when the fallen least expects it, we ambush him, Naruto suggested as Revel returned with a chess set. His death looked towards Naruto, who simply gave her a blank stare while Kurom raised a brow in confusion. Velvet looked towards the pieces before she rounded on Naruto. You can't be serious? She asked as Naruto sighed. Completely. With his death's abilities with her rapier and her ice magic, I think she would be a good rook. She has the speed and she does tend to fight in close combat. Whereas Kurom would be a decent pawn. She managed to cut through my hierro and cut my arm off. That speaks wonders of her abilities, Naruto explained as Velvet's glare lightened. You better know what you're doing, she said as Naruto nodded. Don't worry about it, if they try anything, I will show them my power, he said as he glared at his death and Kurom. Kurom was taken back by the glare Naruto sent in their direction, not expecting someone who seemed to have no emotions suddenly give her a glare filled with hatred. She could just feel the power that he hid away, as though she was being forced beneath the waves of the ocean itself. His death, however, smiled at the fact that Naruto didn't lie about his intentions should they betray him. Nodding, she looked towards him before she turned her attention to Velvet. You have nothing to worry about, Velvet-san. We will do nothing to your daughter. But we do have one condition, she said as her smile widened. And that condition is? Velvet asked as Revel placed the set down in front of them. We join your peerage. We are getting quite tired of running around and taking the random odd jobs. So maybe having joining a peerage will give us a place to properly come home, she said as Velvet turned to Naruto. What do you think? Velvet asked as Naruto closed his eyes and thought. Thinking it over, he opened his eyes and turned his attention back to his death and Kurom. I'll consider it. But I will properly decide after we take out the fallen here. Besides, it gives me time to see if you're worth it or not, he said as he stood to his feet. I know about your skill with a rapier and your ability to control ice. It could be very handy in certain situations, he said before he turned to look at Kurom. While I know nothing about you, Kurom-san, he said as Kurom nodded. My blade is my representative of my sacred gear, she said as Naruto raised a brow. And is there anything else? He asked as she nodded. That aura that appeared around me when I cut off your arm is thanks to it, she continued while munching on a cookie. You'll find out more tonight, she finished as Naruto nodded.